Long ago in a kingdom, a boy raised his sword and exclaimed that he had finally cornered his enemy. It was a legend born in the last century. The boy told his enemy that he had to prepare. The legend of the strongest demon king. He just silently watched the man who told him that he was just an annoying demon. The boy swung his sword straight at the demon king, but he caught the sword with 2 fingers. He easily dodged every attack the clumsy man tried to make. After a long time, this legend came to an end. The guy kept trying to hurt the demon king, but he never succeeded. The demon decided to leave the name of the strongest in the past. He created a huge magic ball in his hand, and the hero froze. After the battle with the hero, being equal in strength, he was not inferior in anything, waging a fierce battle. Chapter of the Gospel of Alta, part of the hero Loin. The demon king said that there were only 17 of them. He stated that even the strongest heroes of all time couldn't handle that level, and that's why he was bored. He decided to pierce his own heart with his own sword. The demon king thought that if reincarnation did exist, then in the next era he would like to be born in a good time and live a decent life as an ordinary person. 1,000 years later, in a house in one of the villages, they loudly exclaimed that he was born. He didn't understand what it was and whether it was a human voice. The man ran around the room looking for boiling water while the girl asked him to calm down. She smiled and said how cute this child was. She showed off her baby Zeon. And so, 18 years passed. Hans, Zeon's father, said that even so, he always helps him so much. The boy asked if this was true, to which Hans replied that it was true and that he was very proud of his son. Zeon laughed awkwardly, then told his father that he was always exaggerating, and Hans said it was true. The demon king was reincarnated as a human. He was in a village in the mountains, living the ordinary life of a farmer. Zeon never thought that the demon king would become just a farmer. He didn't understand how this reincarnation even worked. Oddly enough, he had no problems in this life except for one. Suddenly, the guy heard some sounds, after which a huge bear jumped out in front of them. The boy's father was confused and asked his son to run, but Zeon asked him not to panic. He approached the bear and stretched out his fingers. He clicked them lightly, after which the bear flew away. Hans was very surprised. Father told Zeon that it was very cool. Luckily, the demon king's powers were still with him. Night had fallen, and there was a delicious steak on the table. Zeon looked at the food with admiration while his mother was talking about how it was a bear steak. Hans was happy to say that it was very tasty. His mother said that thanks to Zeon, they now had a lot of supplies. Mother Fiona thanked Zeon for his work. The boy said that everything was fine and he could even bring them dragon meat. The parents said with admiration that he could definitely do it. Zeon took a piece of meat into his mouth and thought that this might sound like a joke, but he was completely serious. He wondered why none of his characteristics changed after he was reborn. But if he was honest, he thought he would live a more useful life. He thought that his mother's food was delicious anyway. Fiona asked what was wrong with him because he was so cute. The boy wished the others bon appetit. The guy poured assam into a mug and sniffed it happily. He thought that everything was fine because power is extremely fickle. Hans exclaimed that the boy was really strong. Mother agreed and said that it was true and he was like a legendary hero. Zeon laughed and said that they were worth each other. He thought that, probably, after 1,000 years, he would still have to fight heroes. As the legend goes, thanks to the hero, the demon lord was defeated. Zeon laughed and said he had nothing to do with it, especially not dark magic. Hans said his son could be a hero by being himself. Fiona remembered that a hero would soon come to their village. Hans supported this, and he said that he seemed to be the strongest of them all. Mother said that their Zeon was no different from him. Zeon wondered what it would be like to be one of the heroes. His parents were already imagining what would happen if their son befriended a hero. In the village square, a man in armor loudly told everyone to remain calm, because as long as Metellus was with him, everything would be fine. It was the brave hero in armor, Metellus. He exclaimed that he would defeat all evil spirits with his sword. Zeon looked at him carefully and thought that this hero certainly looked impressive. The hero said that enemies do not go to his sword. The old man approached him and said that he had never imagined that the hero would be able to come. Metellus told the village chief that it was natural. The hero said that according to his information, dark energy was detected in this village. The village chief was very surprised and asked if this was true. Metillus said that there was no reason to worry. The hero declared that he was the 78th among the heroes, and they would not find anyone like him. Metillus exclaimed that he would destroy all evil with one swing. Zeon turned to his father in confusion and asked what the hero ranking meant. Metillus was surprised and asked if the guy really didn't know anything about the rating. He said that this was a certificate straight from the royal family recognizing the hero's abilities. Proof of his strength and skills. For example, conquering a neighboring state, getting a high position, or a task. All these achievements of the hero are indicated in a rating format. The hero and his entourage are given certificates, and with them they receive advantages. Metillus proudly said that he has a double rank, and therefore they have nothing to worry about because he is a professional in his field. Zeon thought that this was not reassuring at all, because there were dozens of people above Metillus in the ranking who would be better than him. The guy chuckled, thinking about the hero ranking. At home, Hans said that it was the first time he had seen the hero so close. He asked Zeon if he was impressed by what he saw. The guy laughed and said that Metillus looked very strong. Zeon thought that this would only be true by human standards. He wondered where the days were when people like him could only be petty knights. Hans said that he thought Zeon could have made the rankings, and Metillus would have praised him for the way he took down the bear. The guy laughed awkwardly. Zeon thought that the world had probably changed a lot while he was reincarnated. People had started sending ordinary people to fight demons. He thought that a knight only proved that he was a hero by fighting the demon king. But apparently there were no more heroes like him. Anyone can pass for a hero now. Zeon turned to his father and thanked him. Hans, perplexed, asked what he was thanking him for. Zeon said that his father's words made him feel better. Hans asked if that wasn't wonderful. Zeon thought that his father was in good shape and he respected him for that. He told his father that he was cool. Hans blushed and asked his wife if she heard that. The girl sighed with a smile. She put the food on the table and said that the conversation was wonderful, but first they needed to get there before the food got cold. The boy tried it and wished his parents a pleasant appetite. They looked at the boy silently, somewhat perplexed. Zeon wondered what was wrong with him because there were so many important things to do right now. Walking through the field, the guy noted that their harvest was in pretty good condition. He thought that after using the fertilizer, many things had changed for the better. He noted that he was still smart. Holding the pumpkin in his hands, he said that all the people in the royal capital would definitely want to buy vegetables from them. After the shame of his childhood, he was very happy because after 8 years, he was finally able to reap his harvest on his father's land. However, he understood that victory was still far away, and especially over his father. It was breeding. Different varieties of vegetables and fruits crossed together require improvement. It can be called a crazy creation of man. Suddenly, the boy thought about interracial cooperation. Poison. It is contraindicated even for demons, so he was surprised at how far humans had come. He despised them. He wondered how his father managed to grow something so sweet and tasty, because he even received a certificate for it. The guy thought that he would never catch up with him. And what about the rating of heroes, it seemed? He was not interested in it at the moment. He put up a sign indicating that this was his field and thought that this was something worth living for. He wiped away the sweat, thinking that growing vegetables had a personal and deep meaning for him. He exclaimed that one way or another he was expecting a harvest. A couple of days later, on a sunny day, a demon roared loudly. He trampled the tablet. Zeon told the people to listen carefully. He said that this village was taken over by the demon king, the dragon Delodos. Zeon just stared at the floor in silence. The guy asked if the demon thought it would be better to run away from there. The demon asked in confusion who it was. Zeon was looking only at his tablet. The demon caught the boy's head and said that he did not hear the plea to save his life, and he did not understand what Zeon was trying to achieve. The parents were in a panic and were calling their son's name. Suddenly, Metillus burst in and told Zeon to duck. He swung and hit the demon across the body. Suddenly, he was very surprised to notice that he had not done anything. The demon asked if this was really an attack. With all his strength, he threw Metillus to the ground while the hero screamed in pain. Fiona and Hans looked at the hero in shock, while Zeon stood silently and looked at this demon. The monster came closer and said what kind of low level this hero had. then added that it was immediately obvious that this was a very poor area. The demon looked at Zeon, then said that he should run. The guy didn't even flinch. Suddenly, the demon screamed loudly and said that the poor hero had come to their aid, but before he could even begin to show himself, he had already ground him into dust. He proudly declared that he was one of the 4 army governors of the demon world, and Gunnar, the evil dragon lord, was under his control. He said that he was the hell dragon of the 72nd level of hell, Delodos. He addressed Zeon as a foolish man and said that they were born vulnerable and weak, then asked if that humiliated him. He stretched out his hand and said that the thunder of hell was coming and he was going to blow everything up with his own claws. The demon screamed, wishing death upon them all. Zeon then swung his fist and told the demon to be quiet. At that moment, the demon turned to dust. Zeon said that he should apologize for his words. He sighed and said that the demon should know whose field he is on. In the house, the boy saw a letter on the table and asked what it was. The letter said that in order to praise the boy for his achievements, they recognize his talent and award Zeon points for bravery. Now he is in 38th place in the ranking. The boy learned the rating of the heroes and then asked in bewilderment what he had to do with it. His parents were very nervous. They asked what he was saying. Immediately after this, they joyfully pounced on him, saying that this was incredible and now the guy was officially recognized as a hero. The guy said that it seemed like the truth. Gaina wiped his tears and said that he simply couldn't believe that his son was now a hero. Zeon didn't understand at all why they were happy because he personally had a bad feeling. Zeon asked his parents to wait a little because he only defeated one evil spirit the other day, and that's all he did. The father loudly asked what his son was saying because he had defeated the monster with his own strength and helped them get rid of it. So naturally, he was a hero. The mother supported him, and Zeon was very surprised that this was enough. The boy thought that some monster was just controlling the army. He wondered if a new demon lord had appeared. Zeon thought he would be lying if he said he wasn't interested in it at all. But he had nothing to do with the story and he didn't really want to continue it. He stood up from his chair and saw the delighted faces of his parents, who were already in anticipation of something. He asked them what was wrong. Fiona asked her husband what they were going to do. The guy asked in confusion what it meant, then quickly refused and tried to add something. The parents did not listen to him at all, thinking only that they should buy armor. The guy smiled awkwardly and thought that in those days when he wanted to become a man, he did not at all want to live in such a way as to correspond to other people's ideas about how a man should behave. The boy only wanted a quiet life on the family farm. He looked at his parents, who were holding hands and talking sweetly, happy about the news. He smiled softly and thought that there was nothing he could do about it. After some time, almost their entire village gathered in one place. With tears in his eyes, Hans spoke of his dear son leaving. The village chief exclaimed that everyone was praying for the boy's success. Mother handed him a box of food wrapped in cloth with a broad smile. She told him to take care of himself. Having taken everything he needed with him, he waved his hand and said that he was already leaving. Finally, he asked his father to water the field. He sighed, thinking that he was now a hero. Zeon wanted to try it and taste the experience of being a hero. On that very day, the former demon lord left his village. And so began the story of a former demon lord who was reborn as a human. An unrivaled story of a hero and his sword that conquered the magical world. It was quite noisy that day in Toritoru Hikashi, Eastern Province. A boy walked along the streets and looked at all the people, not understanding why there were so many people there. Zeon shielded his face from the sun and asked if there was a festival there today. A kind man who was selling vegetables told the boy that it was always like this in this place. Someone loudly exclaimed about how cheap the cabbage was in his place. Zeon went up to the counter and picked one up, then said with a smile that it was his first time in the city, and that only the best goods were sold here. The woman who was selling cabbage asked him how he knew that. Smiling, the guy showed her that the cabbage stalk was fresh and branched, so you could tell by the way they were grown that they were very well looked after. The girl gasped and asked him if he was a farmer. She asked if he wanted to buy some cabbage since he knew so much. Zeon thought about it. He was confused and wondered if this woman was making fun of him. He pointed his finger at the lemon and asked her to give him this fruit. After a while, he let out a heavy groan and asked why the fruit was so sour anyway. He thought that perhaps it should be used in cooking. He sighed and thought that this was a city after all, and there would be fruits there that he had never even heard of. Suddenly, very close to Zeon, someone screamed that they were being robbed. The man with the knife in the bag ran quickly, telling his pursuers to get away from him because he was going to kill everyone who got in his way. Suddenly, one man shouted loudly, telling the other to run. The criminal laughed cruelly, preparing to kill the other. He raised his weapon at Zeon. Suddenly, the guy hit the criminal in the face, which made him very surprised and unable to hit him. He flew far away, scattering all the boxes with his body. The people who ran with him were extremely surprised and looked at Zeon. The guy did not understand at all why he attacked him. The criminal's friends pulled out their knives and asked in panic how he had done it. They were very confused. Zeon turned to them calmly and asked what they wanted from him. He sighed in annoyance at their pestering, knowing that they wouldn't leave him alone. The two armed men screamed and rushed to kill Zeon. With just his bare hands, the boy easily repelled each of their attacks, without even changing his expression. The men were very surprised and completely confused by the speed of his hands. Zeon was so fast that they did not even have time to follow his hands. At one point, Zeon's hands stopped. They were right above the foreheads of the two criminals. Suddenly, one guy in the crowd asked Zeon to wait a bit. The guy took a deep breath and said that it happened out of nowhere. Immediately after that, he hit the bandits with his fingers. Light marks from the blow remained on the men's foreheads. The men flew into the air, circling the man who had asked Zeon to wait. Money they had already stolen from others flew from their bodies. The boy turned back in shock and looked at the men completely in shock. Both men had lost consciousness, falling onto the boxes and other people's goods. Zeon shook his hand and took a deep breath, then said that the city was quite restless. After a while, a loud cheer was heard in one tavern. Someone was very surprised that his interlocutor was a hero. The guy smiled awkwardly at Zeon and said that he initially thought the guy was a warrior, but he turned out to be a hero. He said that the guy was probably just starting his journey. After he saw Zeon's flyer, he asked in shock how this was possible and how he could already be in 30th place. He exclaimed that it was simply impossible. Zeon, perplexed, asked why the guy was surprised, since he was only in 38th place. The guy asked what his interlocutor was talking about, after which he said that Zeon was incredible. He asked the guy if he even knew how many people were in the ranking. He raised his hand and said that there were only 500. Then he repeated that there were 500. Anon is a newbie in the 437th place. Zeon was puzzled and asked why there were so many of them. Anon was surprised and said that even this number was not enough now because the demons were becoming stronger every year. Zeon, confused, asked what demons Anon was talking about. The guy said that everything was true and that it could only be safe in a kingdom that was well guarded, and outside of it, demons could do whatever they wanted. Anon enthusiastically exclaimed that this was the reason why he became a hero, to help ordinary people, because only people like him could become a shield for the citizens. Zeon smiled softly and said that he understood it. He supported the guy and said that he would definitely become the best, and he could believe him, because he was very good at understanding people. Anon blushed and asked if he was really talking about him, because it was simply impossible. The guy smiled softly and said that even though he had said something cool earlier, he was just an ordinary warrior who had already reached his maximum, and he would never be able to catch up with the likes of Zeon. The guy sighed and said that Anon just thought so. He looked at Zeon, stunned with slight admiration. The guy said that, in fact, there are a huge number of swordsmen and magicians, but there are only a few as worthy as Ano, and it is not always necessary to have only talent to become a real hero. Zeon firmly said that the idea of protecting people could also be enough, because these are the principles of a true hero. He said that this is what one should strive for, and it doesn't matter whether he has talent or not. Ano looked at his interlocutor with fascination. Zeon took a sip of his drink and said that Anon should strive for good and someday he could become the best. He just needed to move forward and not give up. Anon laughed awkwardly and thanked the guy. The guy said that he was once again convinced of how incredible Zeon was, and this was especially evident when he defeated the Sharakomi brothers. Zeon asked if these were the same people who had attacked him earlier. Immediately after that, he asked if he was wrong in saying that they were very weak. Anon loudly exclaimed that this was not true at all. He said that the people in the city said that the three of them were very strong, and although they were not demons, they caused a lot of trouble by robbing and killing people in the city. Anon said that this was the reason he settled there. His goal was to find the Shirakomi brothers. Zeon praised the guy for his goals. Immediately after that, he took a bite of the shashlik and looked at Anon. The guy said that thanks to Zeon, he gained self-confidence, and for this he is very grateful to the guy. Anon was inspired, and Zeon couldn't help but smile at the guy. At that moment, curses were heard on one of the city streets. Someone was saying that all this happened because of that guy. One of the Shirakomi brothers said that they barely escaped. Another said that he had said earlier that the guy did not look like a normal person. The third brother suggested that they should go to a neighboring town until things calmed down. The first brother loudly asked why they were doing this. The second was confused and tried to answer something, saying that next time they would just take and kill them. The first brother loudly asked if he was serious. He said rather discontentedly that in this place most people wear their swords for beauty because otherwise they would have been killed long ago. After that, he asked who could come to them with a sword, because this man would die from that same sword. At that moment, a huge dark-colored wing appeared behind them. Noticing some movements behind, he turned sharply and asked who it was. Suddenly the boy turned pale, seeing behind him a huge demon with jet-black wings. The demon was smiling widely. They were very surprised when they realized that a demon was standing in front of them. The monster smiled broadly and asked if they knew, by any chance, where nearby he could taste fresh blood. They were scared to the core, huddled together. Loud screams were heard in the small alley at that very moment. Anon was walking down the small street. He thought with some sadness that he had said goodbye to Master Zeon, as they had to go their separate ways. He clenched his fist and thought that from now on he would try much harder. He turned to the side and thought that he would probably start with night patrols. Suddenly he heard some screams and was very surprised. He quickly noted that they were coming from the direction of the square. Having reached the right place, the guy froze, made a terrible picture. Many bodies were lying on the ground, while someone was screaming loudly. Dark energy was spreading across the ground. The demon held one man by the neck with his magic and carefully examined how the poor guy was writhing. The demon sighed and said that this man was also ordinary. Immediately after that, he thrust his magic into the man's body. Blood immediately flowed from the wound. Anon was truly horrified that he had met a demon who was also of high rank. On the ground, he saw those brothers who were also lying on the ground and bleeding. The guy did not understand at all what this demon was doing in the square. Suddenly the demon grinned and noticed that the girl next to him looked very tasty. Anon turned around and saw a girl crying from fear behind him. Noticing the monster's gaze, she became even more scared. The monster twisted his magic and with a wide smile said that it was necessary not only to fill your belly, but also to enjoy the wonderful taste. He directed his magic at the girl, but Anon quickly jumped and saved her. Anon adjusted the girl's clothes and asked if she was okay. The stranger said that she was okay because he couldn't hit her. At that moment, the demon got right up to Anon's back and asked how this impudent man dared interrupt his meal. For a moment, Anon froze, thinking that he was very scared, but he couldn't give in. He reached for his sword and raised it high. He stood up and said that his name was Anon Deltar and he was going to protect this girl. The guy was confident. The demon looked at the guy with disgust and asked what he was doing. Immediately after that, he used his magic to throw the guy straight into the wall. Anon coughed up blood and rolled down, unable to get up. The demon turned to the protector and said that he did not look very well, and he was probably very sorry. Immediately after that, he pierced Anon's body with his magic, and the boy screamed in pain. The girl he was protecting also screamed loudly, calling for the hero. The demon asked if this man was also a hero. He said that this was the name for a man who could fight him, and a weakling like him should know his place. Anon was writhing in pain. The guy said that he had originally thought so too, but it was not like that at all. An image of Zeon appeared before his eyes, and he said that his willingness to protect people was what made him a hero. He said that this is the reason why he too can fight back. Anon's hand was shaking violently, but he lifted it with difficulty and swung his sword, cutting the monster's face. At that moment, the demon let go of him and grabbed his face, dropping Anon to the ground. The guy hit his head, after which he immediately opened his eyes, trying to figure out if he had succeeded. Opening his eyes, he saw that the demon was looking straight into his eyes and grinning slyly, saying that he was only joking. Anon turned pale with horror, realizing this. The demon hit the guy again, and Anon coughed up blood even more forcefully. He looked up, barely holding on to consciousness. He didn't understand how this was possible, because earlier he had clearly cut the monster's head in two. The girl rushed towards him and tried to lift him up, while the demon stated that the topic was simple, since he was able to deal such a blow. The monster waved its cloak, after which many faces could be seen inside, belonging to both humans and other various creatures. He said that he could react calmly, because he had lived for more than 300 years for a reason. The vampire also said that it was a pity that he had ruined his hair. He lightly touched his magic and said that it was funny because even after defeat, he acted like a hero. He approached and said that it was a pity, but Anon could not save the girl. The demon said that he would give her an extremely quick death. The girl froze, while Anon rose with difficulty and took the sword in his hands, after which he said that he would not allow the vampire to do this. Seeing this, the demon felt irritated and took a deep breath. He directed many strong attacks and exclaimed that, in this case, Anon would die in agony. The guy stood in his place while the attacks flew at him. At that very moment, Zeon appeared there, raised his hand high and repelled the vampire's attack. Anon looked at his friend in shock and then asked if it was really Mr. Zeon in front of him. The guy said that he felt something strange and therefore decided to go back, and it seems that he did not do it in vain. The demon was very surprised and did not understand whether the guy had stopped him with his bare hands. He thought that this could not be. The vampire assumed that the higher demon who had died not so long ago was killed by this guy. Anon burst into tears and began to apologize to Zeon, saying that he could not do anything. Zeon, confused, asked what Anon was talking about. He said that if his friend had not been there, the girl would already be dead. He smiled sweetly and said that Anon could be proud of himself, because now he could rightfully call himself a hero. After these words, Anon could no longer hold back and cried even harder. The demon laughed loudly and said that it was very good for such a non-entity like Zeon. The guy gave the monster a cold look while the vampire cheerfully said that the guy looked really sad. He started to change his form, after which he mocked him and said that he was an ordinary loser who should start begging for mercy. He wished death on the boy, after which he rose high into the sky and spread his wings. The vampire asked what the man would do now. He said that there was nothing he could do, and so he should just hang his head and accept death. Anon looked around in panic, trying to figure out what to do. The guy screamed loudly and told his friend to run because this was not an ordinary demon, but a real vampire aristocrat of hundreds of lives. The demon laughed and said that this guy was right, and that she was not just crammed with the blood of a nobody, but of a real aristocrat. He said that they should be happy that they would be part of his bloody festival, as would everyone else in the city. He stated that they were just weaklings who were born to be food for people like him. Suddenly, he began to gather his magic right in the center of his chest. Anon was confused and asked what the monster was doing. At that moment, the many faces that were on his cloak began to release even more magic. Magic began to gather at his fingertips. The vampire's veins bulged and his muscles grew larger and harder. He had assumed his ultimate vampire form. The demon laughed maniacally and asked them if they should start already. He stated that it didn't matter whether he was a demon or a human because he would kill him either way. Immediately after that, he rushed at Zeon at great speed, intending to kill the guy. He was completely calm, saying that the vampire was very good, after which he added that he could have called him to him earlier. The demon was very surprised and asked what this stupid man meant. Zeon said that it was impossible now because they were in another place and at another time. Immediately after that, he spread his arms and inflicted numerous point wounds at an incredible speed, which made them completely invisible. Anon, on the other hand, sat on the ground and clutched his wounded hand. He was genuinely amazed that Zeon did this in just an instant. He continued to watch silently as the demon screamed loudly in pain and tried to form a full sentence. Zeon calmly said that this demon seemed to have lost too quickly, and he seemed to have overdone it a bit. The demon looked at the guy and tried to understand what was happening. Suddenly, he was very surprised and thought that this simply could not be. In Zeon's silhouette, he clearly saw the Demon King. But this only gave him more questions about it that he would never be able to ask. Blood splattered everywhere, and his life was finally over. By this point, it was already light outside. Anon shook Zeon's hand and sincerely thanked his friend for what he had done. The guy, in response to this, smiled softly and said that he should not thank him. Anon said that Mr. Zeon saved this entire city and with it Anon himself. With a gentle smile, he said that there would come a day in the future when he would become just like Zeon himself, and then everyone would know him as the best hero in the world. In response to this, Zeon smiled and said that he would look forward to it. Anon suddenly asked where his friend was heading now. Zeon thought about it and said that he had not decided yet. Anon said that in that case, Zeon should go to Anantai. The guy asked in confusion what kind of place it was. With a smile on his face, Anon said that this city was the capital of the East, and it was completely different from the city they were in at the moment. He said that, in addition, the food there was very tasty. Anon also mentioned that there is an extremely popular hero living in that city who also ranks 9th in the hero rankings. The name of this hero was Melia of Sukuin. It was about the dragon Delodos and the vampire aristocrat of 100 lives. The girl carefully read the document she held in her hands in front of the people gathered in the room. She said that both demons they hated were destroyed in just 2 months. A woman in the audience asked what that meant and why she was even telling them. The man sitting next to her said that it just proved that they had all worked very hard. The girl who had given this information looked at them and calmly said that the only problem was that both of these demons were destroyed by the same person, and he did it completely alone. The girl's words greatly surprised the people who had gathered. Some of them just looked at her in amazement, while others began to curse at her and make a scene about how it was simply physically impossible. The girl looked at him and told him that others said that it was a human who did it. She added the information that he was 18 years old and came from a normal village. She also said that his name was Zeon, and there was no record of his heroism before. The man at the table asked in confusion if it was possible to believe the information that he did it alone. The old man next to him replied that the report said that he was alone, which confirmed this fact. The girl said that it would be difficult even for the Great Three, let alone an ordinary hero. After all, these demons were on a completely different level compared to those that live everywhere. She looked at the footage and said that the vampire aristocrat was immortal, so it was more like a production in which the hero kills an immortal monster in public. The girl looked thoughtfully to the side and came to certain conclusions about Zeon. She said that he could be a demon who was sent to them in order to spy on them all. The man exclaimed in panic that if this was true, their kingdom was in great danger. The old man told him to calm down, saying that at this point it was just a guess. He asked if this was true. The girl picked up her notes and quickly replied that, whatever the case, Zeon was now under suspicion. After which she added the words that the boy was now heading to Anantai. Hearing this, the others were very surprised, and the thoughtful old man replied that this was simply great news for them. The girl addressed the assembled people, saying that if they left it to the girl, she would solve everything. To this, the old man responded with agreement and said that it was simply wonderful. Meanwhile, Melia Vermilion, the hero of the Blazing Flame, had already arrived in the city of Anantai. By that time, the guy had already gone to the guild and was standing in line at the registration desk. The girl at the desk happily said words of congratulations, after which she told Mr. Zeon that his hero rating had been successfully updated. Zeon thought and came to the conclusion that it was because he killed that demon. The girl said that she would now look at his rank as a guy. The guy turned to the girl and said that he had previously heard that they could take a task, to which the girl said that everything was correct. The guild worker looked at the papers and was very shocked, since the guy was rank 17, and she did not expect to see this at all. Zeon thought about how he was almost out of money. He thought about how he needed to do a couple of tasks that Anon had mentioned. The girl pointed to the board and explained that their guild had a number of quests, some of them directly from the royal family. There were also some that were ordered by nearby villages. Zeon said that they had a huge selection of quests. The guy saw a task where he had to find a cat. He asked if this was really a task for heroes. The girl answered with a smile that it was not only for heroes. She said that there are adventurers and hunters. Many people use their guild. Zeon looked around at the people present and realized that not everyone in this place was a hero. The guy suggested that the higher the rank of the task, the greater the reward. The girl answered in the affirmative. The worker looked at the board and was about to suggest a task to Zeon when he suddenly said that he wanted to take an S-ranked task. He pointed his finger straight at the board, and the people around him froze in shock. At that moment, someone behind Zeon began to laugh loudly, which confused the guy. The girl was a little confused. The boy asked if they had heard of Zeon who wanted to take on an S-rank quest. He said that they had a legend. Next to him stood the hero Masa and the hero Yasu. The boy was their leader, who was ranked 87th, the hero Solid. Zeon turned to Solid and asked if he had done something wrong. Solid called out to him and told him to speak with respect. He pointed at himself and said that he was ranked 87th in the hero rankings and his name was Captain Solid. He said that he was the face of this city and then smiled smugly. Solid asked Zeon if he even knew what he wanted to do. He told him it was an S-rank quest, which are the hardest and highest level quests. The guy pointed his finger arrogantly at Zeon and said that they were definitely not for amateur heroes like him. Solid assumed the guy was just from the village, so he asked where he was from. Zeon replied that he was from Nanana village. The boy laughed loudly when he heard that Zeon was a country bumpkin from Nanana. He understood because there was nothing there but mountains. Zeon's gaze became much more serious. He looked at Solid and asked what he had just said. Solid was slightly confused. He placed his hand on Zeon's cheek and asked how he dared to speak to him like that. Zeon said something about just asking Solid. He asked again what Solid said. Zeon called the guy a man whose head was left unharvested. Solidus got very angry and shouted words about how beautiful his hair was. He swung his arm and shouted that the guy was finished. Solid grabbed his weapon, the legendary battle axe, and swung it powerfully to strike the boy. The guild worker panicked greatly while Masa and Yasu watched with smiles. Suddenly, Solid was very surprised. Zeon held the blade of the axe in his fingers and said that Solid had a pretty good knife. The guy exclaimed in response that it was a legendary battle axe. Zeon pressed the blade a little harder, causing it to crumble. Solid was very shocked, and the boy said words about not dying right away. He broke off a piece of the blade and added words about how it would be ugly on his part otherwise. Zeon said that now the boy could start all over again. Zeon threw the broken piece at Solid, causing the boy to instantly fly far back, breaking through the wall with his body. Zeon froze awkwardly, saying that it was an accident. The girl next to him was shocked by what had happened. The guy quickly told her that he would compensate for everything and she just needed to tell him how. At that moment, someone interrupted them with words about waiting. The guild worker and Zeon turned to look at the new guest. In front of them stood a girl who was talking about how she hadn't been in this place for a long time, and now there was a hole in the wall. Melia looked at the boy and asked him why he started a fight for an S-rank quest. She called out Zeon Ishtar's name loudly. The girl said with a smile that she had seen the guy in action and it was a masterpiece. Zeon asked the girl who she was and how she knew his name. At that moment, the guild worker called Melia by name with a smile. The worker said something about the girl finally being home, which caught the girl's attention. People in the guild started saying that it was indeed Melia who was in 7th place. Melia confidently introduced herself as Melia Vermilion. She immediately said that she was ranked 7th in the hero rankings. The girl said that she came to meet the guy, a great man like him. Zeon replied with the words that he had already heard about the girl from his friend Anon. He asked Melia what she wanted. She said that she would answer directly and then called Zeon by name. She looked at the boy and asked him if Zeon was on the demon's side while the others silently watched what was happening. Zeon asked what would happen if that was the case. The girl replied that in that case she would kill him. At that moment, Melia quickly rushed towards Zeon, who was simply standing there. She approached the boy and grabbed the sword, which she quickly pulled out of its sheath. At that moment, the weapon seemed familiar to Zeon. Melia threw Zeon to the ground and threatened him with her sword while the boy lay quietly on his back. The guy asked the girl why she stopped, to which she asked him back. She asked if he was really human. At that moment, Melia asked the knight what had happened. He replied that they had been attacked by a demon. The girl turned around in surprise and told the knight to report to full information. She waved her hand towards Zeon and told him to lie down and not move. Melia said that if he moved, she would kill him. These words of the girl surprised Zeon. The heroine quickly set off on her journey. She climbed up to the roof, thinking that the guy didn't even resist. She thought about how she still couldn't understand anything. She wondered who Zeon was anyway. Zeon was sitting on the floor at the time, talking about how he would have to stay still. He said his mom wouldn't be able to handle him being killed. He wondered how that had happened. Meanwhile, there was activity on the square. The guy was shocked and asked where they came from, and the girl next to him added that they were strong. In front of them stood monsters that began to attack. The guy screamed that there were only more of them. The girl asked where everyone was, where Melia or Mr. Solid was, after which she cursed. Suddenly, the monsters started attacking the boys with something. Because of this, they fell and couldn't move at all. The mysterious man spoke of a miracle of engineering and told him to move forward. He asked the boys where their heroes were. He was talking about how wonderful this city was. The guy asked what was wrong with him, thinking he was stupid. The girl added that he was a very strange guy. The man said with a smile that they would all be excellent material. It was one of the 4 demon kings, the goblin Eritreus. Suddenly, the guy pointed his finger to the side and told the girl to look in that direction. They looked away and froze in shock. There were unusual monsters standing in front of them. The boys noticed that they were wearing the hero's clothes. They couldn't believe their eyes. Eritreus said that if it were up to him, he would like to get better quality material. But as they say, what is, is. He raised his hand and pointed to the side, and then he screamed. He laughed and said that failure is the mother of success. All he needed was the materials. The demon pointed his hand forward, ordering the monsters to bring them to him. The boy sat confusedly in front of the crowd of monsters. At that moment, the girl, drawing her sword, thought about what was happening. She just needed to destroy them. She quickly began attacking the monsters, which greatly surprised Eritreus. Melia stood in front of him and asked if he wanted more. The man trembled and said that here was their star. Melia asked if he knew her, and then added that it was an honor for her, causing the demon to laugh loudly. His laughter made the girl confused and frowned slightly. Eritreus said words about how much she made him laugh. Melia looked at the demon and asked if everything was all right with his head. The demon replied that of course not, because he is the craziest scientist. He told that he is one of the 4 generals of the demon king, the goblin Eritreus. After his words, the demon quickly began to attack the girl with his claws. Melia dodged deftly and approached the demon, cutting off his claws. This greatly surprised the demon. Melia looked back and thought about what it meant that he was one of the strongest demons. She looked at Eritrea and said that she would not be arrogant. She asked if he was really one of the 4 generals of the demon king. Eritrea was very pleased. The man raised his hand and shouted words about how he wanted the girl to be his material. The ground beneath the demon's feet began to move, and he began to laugh loudly as a huge monster awakened beneath him. A huge monster rose from the ground, with a demon sitting on its head and laughing loudly. The girl looked at the creature in front of her in shock. The demon said that this masterpiece was made up of heroes and 3 cities, and besides that, there are more than 10,000 other materials. Eritreus exclaimed with a wide smile that just thinking about it made him feel better. Melia cried out in rage for the demon to be quiet. Suddenly, attacks started flying out of one of the monster's holes. The girl was very surprised, trying to quickly dodge. She looked back and saw a trace of a gunshot left behind her. The demon said that it was incredible. He couldn't believe that he had missed. He frowned and said that he was a little sorry. However, he was glad that there were enough materials. Melia thought that at this rate, the demon would destroy the city. Melia began to envelop her blade in energy. She used the flame of the dragon sword. At the same time, the huge monster used the absolute beam. He attacked the girl, who also rushed into battle. However, Melia was suddenly very surprised. The girl flew to the side and hit the wall. She breathed heavily and thought that she couldn't. Eritreus said that the girl almost managed to cope with him. He considered it excellent. The demon smiled broadly and said that the girl should not worry, because he would save her life. After all, she was too valuable material, which could not be said about the others. Melia looked around the battlefield and thought about all these people and what would happen if she lost this fight. The heroine rose to her feet, trembling slightly, which greatly surprised the demon Eritreus, who was watching her. The girl raised her hands and began to gather energy, saying that she would not lose to the demon. Eritrea, holding the monster's head, looked closely and shouted words that this could not be. The girl prepared to attack with the thought that she would take his life in exchange for her own. Melia looked at the demon with a smirk and said the words that she was Melia Vermilion. She was about to attack when someone interrupted her, asking what she had there. Zeon appeared in front of the girl, looking into the distance and saying that he looked too big. Melia was very surprised, calling out to the guy who appeared in front of her. Zeon offered the girl to negotiate. He pointed towards the monster with a smile, saying that if the guy destroyed it, she would cancel his death penalty. The city was in chaos. Melia said that Zeon said he would destroy the monster. The guy added that he, of course, did not fully understand what was happening here. He assumed that he just needed to destroy it. The guy said that if that was the case, then the girl could leave it to him. Melia, surprised, yelled at the guy to wait. Eritreus on his monster looked questioningly at the new hero. He wondered who it was. He pointed his finger at it and wondered if the boy really thought he could defeat the demon even if the hero behind him had already given up. Suddenly Eritreus was surprised. He looked at the screen and began to curse because the indicators did not work. The guy's indicators were not reflected on the screen, and the system gave the stunned demon an error notification. Eritreus couldn't understand why the indicator started to show an error. This was his great creation, Melia exclaimed, asking if Zeon even knew who this demon was. She told him that he was one of the demon generals, the goblin Eritreus. Zeon chuckled, saying that it was very boring. He shared that in his time, there were also such clowns who called themselves the generals of the demon king. Melia was perplexed by the guy's words. The demon laughed and said that there was nothing terrible about it because no mistakes would stop him. He would simply grind the guy into dust. At that moment, the huge monster released 4 arms and began to rise, and the demon spoke of his great creation. The monster stood up and crossed his 2 arms in front of him. The girl couldn't believe that he had become even bigger. She asked how they could defeat him. The demon's creation began to prepare for a new attack, and Eritreus furiously screamed that he would erase it. He aimed a maximum version of the death ray at the heroes in front of him, which fired straight at them. Zeon raised his hand in front of him at that moment, which surprised Melia, who was standing behind him. The death ray shot missed the boars, which struck the heroine, who fell to the ground in shock. The demon looked at the heroes questioningly and wondered what had happened and why the guy was still standing. He assumed in shock that Zeon had blocked him with his bare hands. Zeon calmly lowered his hand, and Melia at that moment asked in shock how he did it. Eritreus raised his hand high and shouted with a smile that he knew it was not just a mistake. He slammed his fist on the big button, saying that this was not the end. He decided to use the hellish death ray, which had 120% power. The guys were very surprised by this. Zeon took a small stone in his hand and, saying that it was time to finish, threw it at the monster. A huge hole instantly appeared in the monster. Melia looked at what had happened with a shocked expression on her face. The demon began to fall and cry out in question about what had just happened. Zeon looked up to where the rubble was falling from. He suddenly grabbed one of them and turned around. The guy was holding the huge hand of the broken monster. He swung and made a quick strike. Eritreus asked in shock what the guy was doing, when suddenly he was hit by a huge stone palm of his monster. Zeon's blow sent the demon flying high into the sky with a loud cry. The guy looked after him and smiled and said how well he had flown. Melia, who had been watching the guy all this time, said in shock that he could do it. Behind them, people suddenly appeared and joyfully began shouting that they had won. One girl ran up to Melia and said that she had saved the city. Melia replied in confusion that it wasn't her. However, she was already surrounded by a large number of people. She shouted a question about where Zeon went. The guy was calmly shaking himself off to the side. He turned to the girl and said that he had done his part. The guy waved and said goodbye while Melia screamed for him to stop and not go. The girl suddenly attacked Zeon, screaming that she told him to stop. She grabbed the confused guy by the jacket. Melia said that she still had many questions for him, and the guy just silently looked at the girl. While they were trying to put out the burning man next to him, Zeon looked at the heroine in front of him, who did not let go of him. Night had fallen in the city. Zeon sat in front of the laid table. Solid called the boy a brother with a smile, saying that he believed in him. Solid happily said that he understood this as soon as he saw Zeon. He said that the boy was very strong. Zeon looked around and said that it was a bit noisy today. Solid replied that everyone was celebrating that he had defeated the Demon King's general. The guy patted Zeon on the back and said that he and Melia were now the heroes of their city. While Solid was celebrating, someone called Zeon's name. A girl came up to him and Zeon said that she was from the guild. The girl confirmed his words, saying that Zeon had a good memory. The girl lifted a blanket from the large cart in front of her and congratulated the boy on his victory over the Demon King's general. She said that this was his reward. Solid was shocked by what he saw, and Zeon asked why there was so much money. The girl replied that defeating the general was equivalent to completing an SS rank quest. She said that their guild also decided to add gold for saving their city. Zeon handed the girl a small bag and told her to just put a couple of coins in there. That would be enough for him. This action on the part of the guy greatly shocked the girl. She waved her hands, saying that Zeon had saved the whole city. The guy replied that that was enough, and she could leave the rest for the restoration of the city. Suddenly, the guy's attention was drawn to a girl who was standing nearby, leaning against the wall. The guy looked at her silently. Melia watched the boy. Zeon asked her if something was wrong. He thought she wanted to ask him a few questions. She suddenly cried out in confusion that he had misunderstood, because she didn't have a single question she wanted to ask. Zeon asked her with an awkward smile what she wanted then. The girl caught her breath and agreed to answer. The girl pointed her sword at Zeon and spoke words asking him to fight her again. Zeon and Melia stood in the main square where others watched them. Solid asked Zeon what had happened. The guild worker asked why they were going to fight, to which the guy replied that he did not know. Melia, holding her sword, said that it was just so that everyone would know that she had given in during the day. She looked at the guy confidently, pointing her sword at him, and said that now she would give it her all. Zeon looked at the girl, then closed his eyes and thought that it seemed he didn't understand people at all. The guy waved his hand, telling the girl to come over so he could teach her some manners. Melia quickly rushed towards him. Zeon quickly turned his gaze to the girl who was behind him, about to attack. He defended himself with his hand, but the girl disappeared into thin air. The guy thought that it was a fiery illusion. Melia rushed at the guy from behind, loudly screaming for him to get it. She swung her sword, but the next moment she was already lying on the ground under the guy who held his fist above her head. Zeon spoke the words that he had won. Then he delivered a powerful blow. Melia lay on the ground in shock as the boy's fist punched the ground next to her head. The ground beneath them cracked and someone said that Zeon had won. The boy helped Melia up, saying that he didn't understand why she wanted a duel. The girl said that she had decided, and then suddenly extended her hand to the surprised boy. Melia suddenly kissed Zeon on the lips, causing the people nearby to open their mouths in shock. The girl pulled away from the surprised guy and said that when he came to her aid, she was scared. She took Zeon's hand and said that with his fist he saved her and pierced her heart. She confessed her love to the guy and said that she wanted him to become her husband. This proposal shocked Zeon. After some time, Zeon asked Melia how long she was going to go with him. The girl answered affirmatively, saying that he had not yet answered her questions. She looked at the guy and said that he was going to be her husband, so they needed to decide what they were going to do. Melia said that since the guy defeated the general, now there will be close attention to him. The girl was sure that the heroes who were higher in rank would be interested in the guy. She asked Zeon what he would do now, to which the guy replied that he would first go to the royal capital. He confidently said that, in the end, every man should visit there at least once and taste their royal vegetables. Melia looked at the guy in confusion and replied that it seemed like he was a country bumpkin at heart. The girl really thought that Zeon could change this world, a world full of despair. Meanwhile, in the northernmost demon city, the Demon King's castle, a large number of demons had gathered. They were shouting words that demons would rule. They were praising the 4 generals of the Demon King. The demon said that he was just unlucky. The other demoness told him to calm down because as long as they were together, everything would be fine. Another demon exclaimed questioningly, "Did he lose to a demon?" He said that was the reason he did not want the demon to become a general. Suddenly, someone interrupted them, telling them to watch their mouths because they were being watched. The demoness looked at the photo of Zeon and asked if it was the same person. She remarked that he was quite handsome. Another demon added that he did not look strong at all. The demon next to them was surprised by what he saw, while the other one was talking about how he would just go and kill him. The demon in armor said that there was no need, because he will go himself. He turned and walked away while the others watched. The demoness asked what was wrong with him and what motivated him so. The demon next to her replied that he did not like him, despite the fact that he had been in his post for almost 1,000 years. The demon in armor looked at the picture of the boy and thought that he definitely felt it. He was sure that it was him. his king. He went to him. Melia cut the dessert and with a sweet expression on her face, handed a piece to Zeon, telling him to try it. The boy looked at the girl and asked what kind of strange food it was. Melia answered that it was pancakes. She said that they were very popular in this kingdom. She handed him a piece again. Zeon looked at the dessert in front of him and then tasted it, causing the girl to smile happily. The royal capital was delighted with the appearance of a new hero. Zeon was at the Yado Inn. He looked out the window and assumed the Cressilia castle was there. The guy took the paper in his hands and said that he was starting to like the royal capital more and more. He opened the newspaper and said that they got to it much faster than he expected. Another man asked the guy what he was surprised about because they hadn't even sat down once in 3 days on the road. Not once. Melia asked the guy how he wasn't tired at all. In fact, the girl could barely keep up with him. Although Zeon had adjusted to her pace, his physical indicators were simply frightening. The guy spoke enthusiastically about how they had to visit their main square. The girl thought that he didn't seem like a bad guy yet. However, Melia couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something. Besides that, there was another thing that was bothering her. She looked at the guy in surprise and wondered if he would even try to spy on her. Was he not interested in the beauty washing next to him? She thought about how ordinary people wouldn't sacrifice their lives for this. Melia had even left everything open on purpose. She thought in shock that this couldn't be true. The girl looked at Zeon suspiciously and asked if he was a demon spy. She said that there were no other reasons, so why didn't he peek at her? The guy asked why Melia decided to use the bathroom in his room. Zeon stood up and said something about how it didn't matter because he hadn't even noticed her while he was reading the newspaper anyway. He looked at the paper saying that in his village there was not even such a thing. The girl silently looked at the newspaper and then suddenly became surprised. Melia quickly approached and looked at the newspaper, telling the guy to wait a second. Zeon asked what happened. The guy said something about this article being about the rise in water prices. The girl grabbed his head, telling him to read it later, and then pointed at something. She pointed her finger, telling him to look there. Zeon looked closely. The newspaper said that they had important information today. A new outstanding hero had appeared in their world and his name was Zeon. He was the best newcomer. The girl was confused and Zeon noted that it was about him. The guy said he didn't look very good in this photo. The girl exclaimed that he should read the text and the photo was not the most important thing here. Suddenly there was a knock at the door and Mr. Zeon was called in. He was informed that an invitation to the palace had arrived. The knight asked the girl on the throne if she really wanted this because it was simply stupid to give the royal title to a newcomer. The guy said that it had only been a month since he became a hero. The girl thought about it with a smile and then asked if that was really bad. She said that she had already decided everything and his rating and actions indicate that he was doing the right thing. The girl threw the newspaper to the knight, saying that the guy had achieved in 1 month what people never achieve in their entire lives. She was sure that he would become the hope of all mankind. She tapped her shoes in anticipation. The girl rose from the throne saying that she was sure that he would be pleased with her words. The princess of the Cressilia kingdom, Betubor Ella Cressilia, was the first to address Zeon, saying that for all the feats he had accomplished, she would award him the title of One Punch Man. The girl said with a smile that now he could wear it with pride. The guy stood silently in front of the princess. The guy assumed that the girl in front of him was a princess. This behavior of the guy shocked Melia. She angrily exclaimed that this was Princess Betuar. The boy excitedly apologized, saying that he wanted to visit their famous market. Melia called out to the boy and said that it could be postponed. Melia told the boy to stop acting like that. Princess Betuar laughed and said that the boy was funny. The knight looked at the boy and said that it was disrespectful. He said that the princess was not an ordinary girl and such treatment of her was unforgivable. This caught the boy's attention. Melia recognized the man in front of her. It was the knight's commander. He was ranked 3rd in the hero rankings, Yusha Trishman Holy Sword. Zeon noticed something familiar. Zeon suddenly said that this was the royal capital. So why was there such a weak hero next to the princess? Yusha asked about these words again. The guy answered with a smile that he didn't know what place the knight was in, but definitely not in first place. Melia next to him was very surprised. Zeon looked at the knight and asked him if he knew about the hero rankings. Yusha put his hand on his sword. He rushed to attack, saying that no matter who the guy was, he would answer for his words. The knight took out his holy sword, when suddenly, something surprised him greatly. Zeon held the blade of the sword in his hand and said that he didn't think he would meet this sword in such a place. The guy held the blade and said that, unfortunately, even he couldn't help the knight Yusha. Zeon asked with a smile how many blows the knight could manage while Yusha couldn't move. The guy clenched his fist and said that the knight considered their fight as training. He said that he was starting. Zeon smiled and told the knight to hold on tight, after which Yusha opened his eyes in shock. The boy delivered a powerful blow to the knight, who quickly flew back and crashed into the wall behind him. The knight was hit hard, and Princess Baitoir asked in shock what was wrong with her knight. Melia was very shocked. Melia asked Zeon what he was doing, to which the guy replied that she shouldn't worry. He said that everything was under control. The knight was very angry. Zeon looked at the knight and said that they were not finished with him yet. Yusha stood up, addressing the boy. He asked if the boy knew what he had just done. Melia screamed at Zeon to stop before it got worse. Knight Yusha suddenly swore loudly, saying that the princess had suffered because of Zeon. Princess Baitoir noticed a small wound on her hand. The knight furiously exclaimed that Zeon deserved nothing but death. The princess knight raised his sacred sword above his head, using 1,000 sword attack. Zeon became wary because he noticed something familiar. Yusha at that moment shouted words about what kind of harm this was to the princess. Zeon was surrounded by a large number of swords, and the knight rushed to attack, telling the boy not to expect a quick death. Melia excitedly shouted to the boy the words that the knight's most powerful technique. Zeon was interested in the fact that this was the technique of 1,000 swords. Zeon thought that this was not just an optical illusion. He said with a smile that this was already interesting. The next moment, something suddenly stopped the guys. Baitoir appeared between them. She closed her eyes, telling the boys to stop. She looked at Zeon and said that they had both gone too far. The princess sternly told Yusha that he would also get what he deserved for attacking the newcomer. The knight apologized to the girl. Princess Baitoir covered her face with her fan, saying that she could now be sure that the boy was worthy of the title. The girl handed Zeon a scroll and said that it was proof of his title. She understood that the boy might not be interested in it, but it could be useful to him. For this reason, she told him to take it. The boy silently took the scroll and looked at it. The girl laughed and said that she saw how bored the guy was in this place. She told him to go to the city. Princess Baitoir said with a smile that this is the place where the best items are kept and the place where the strongest gather. She also added that she wants to reward the boy for this misunderstanding. The girl looked at Zeon with a smile. After a short pause, the guy nodded and thanked the princess. He said with a confident smile that he wanted to grow vegetables. The princess was very surprised and replied that it was possible. After some time, the girl was yelling at Zeon, saying that he was a fool. Melia was telling the guy that the girl was a princess, and he almost destroyed her castle. The guy assumed that everything went well. Besides, he thought Melia liked it. The heroine replied that she didn't like it. She, as his fiancée, wanted to tell him something. She raised her finger, saying that the guy needed to learn social etiquette. Zeon was surprised by the girl's words about the fiancé. The guy asked Melia if she really wanted to stay with him in the royal capital. Zeon said that the princess had given him a plot of land, so they should take a look at it. He suddenly looked somewhere with a smile and said that here they were. The couple stood in the middle of the street. Melia asked Zeon if he was sure they were going to this place. The guy asked what was wrong with it. He said it was beautiful. Melia remained silent in shock, and then said that if he liked it, then she liked it too. They stood in front of a tall building. Zeon spoke enthusiastically about how this place was in the center of the city, near the main square, and the building looked like new. Melia looked at him silently. The guys went inside and the guy smiled and told the girl to just look at this. He pointed to a piece of land and said that it was his field where he would grow vegetables. The girl asked what was wrong with him. Zeon picked up a sign and walked off with a confident look. He stuck it in the ground and the girl wondered where he got it from. The guy looked at her with a smile and said that everything was ready now. The sign said that this was the field of Zeon. Zeona stood up and thought about the man with the sacred sword. He certainly looked like the one he fought last time. The guy assumed that if the knight was in third place, then there were at least 2 more people stronger than him. Zeon thought with a smile that he definitely wouldn't be bored. Melia thought that the room next to Zeon was empty. Zeon cursed with a shocked face and said that this couldn't be happening. He couldn't understand what this was. The guy didn't know what to do. His whole body went numb. This was the first time Zeon didn't know what to do. In front of him was a royal melon that cost 30,000 gold. The guy stood at the display case and said that even for the royal capital, this was too much. He thought that 30,000 gold pieces were 8 huge boxes of potatoes. However, it was a royal melon. Zeon closed his eyes and said something about how maybe this was a normal price for the locals. After some time, he returned home saying that he had not even realized how he had bought it. He was glad that he had at least checked that it was ripe. He looked at the Great King melon and said that he would eat it today. He was thinking about making some tea when his name was called. Melia stood in front of Zeon with a wide smile on her face. She was very happy to see the guy. The girl hugged Zeon and asked if he wanted to swim or eat. She assumed he wanted her. Zeon waved his hand and suggested next time, then closed the door. Melia was annoyed, and the guy said that he thought so. She was incredible. The guy looked at the melon and was already anticipating how he would eat it. Melia was shouting behind the door and asking what it was. She ordered to open it. Zeon asked what she was doing here anyway. He assumed the girl had simply mixed up the rooms. Melia replied that it didn't matter. She thought it was strange because in the book everything was the other way around. She said that the melon was very tasty. Zeon smugly added that it was a great royal melon. Melia said that it didn't matter. She asked Zeon what he would do now. The girl said that the guy now received the title of hero and most likely he will soon head the list of heroes. She said that the title holders are no longer just heroes. Melia explained to the guy that the title gives great advantages, but with it comes great responsibility. Zeon thought it was just an addition to the name. Melia told him that, of course it wasn't. She said that he would now have access to S-rank missions. He would also have access to royals and forbidden techniques. She said that from now on, wherever he was, his word would carry weight. Zeon smiled and suggested that this was good. Melia added that he had no right to give up on this. No matter how powerful the enemy stood before him, he had to fight to the end. The guy happily said that it was incredible because even at the crust it still tasted sweet. The girl called out to the guy and asked if he was even listening to her. Zeon replied that they could always take advantage of the tactical retreat and try again. The girl replied that he was right. She said that this opportunity would not always be there. The guy started talking about the moment he saw her on the battlefield. Zeon said that she was ready to sacrifice herself for the sake of the city and the civilians. The guy said that the girl was the first real hero he had ever seen. He was glad that he had helped her then. This surprised the girl greatly. Melia asked him, confused, what had gotten into the guy. She replied that of course she was a real hero. She asked him what he was thinking. Zeon had scared her. She looked at him and asked why he decided to become a hero. She said that, although he was very strong, he didn't look like a hero at all. The boy replied that one day a dragon decided to visit his village and after he dealt with it, he was proclaimed a hero. The girl asked if he was serious. Melia said that if you think about it, why does he need all this? Zeon has been thinking about something for a long time. Zeon thought that even though they knew they couldn't defeat him, they didn't give up. The fragile-looking people stood firmly on the ground every time and fought with him to the end. The boy raised his head and replied with a smile that he wanted to understand what it meant to be human. Melia asked in bewilderment what the guy was talking about, to which he replied that she shouldn't worry about it. The girl was confused. She said sheepishly that if the guy wanted, she could help him. Zeon said that he refused. Zeon got up from the table, saying that he needed to wash the dishes. The girl exclaimed that he should wait. She approached him and asked if he was listening to her. The guy remained silent. Meanwhile, Knight Yusha said that everything seemed to be holding up. The princess replied that she would go for the time being. The guy apologized, saying that he couldn't do more. The girl said that everything was fine. She told him not to worry because she would be fine with that. She asked the knight how he liked the child. Yusha asked if she meant the last rude one. Princess Betuar laughed, saying that Yusha didn't seem to like him. The knight replied that the girl was right. He said that he didn't like the guy, but he was undoubtedly strong. Yusha said that Zeon was most likely stronger than even him. The princess replied that she understood. She said with a smile that if Yusha was saying this, then she had hit the jackpot. She asked about maybe becoming better friends with Zeon. The knight replied that he refused. He wanted to say something about the guy, but he was suddenly interrupted, saying that it was urgent. Yusha asked the knight who had arrived what had happened. He added that the knight should not forget that he was in front of the princess, to which he apologized and said that it was urgent. The knight panicked and told that there were demons at the royal gates. This news shocked the princess and the knight. The knights ran and shouted that they were prioritizing the evacuation of the citizens. One of them shouted for the 6th and 8th squads to follow him. He exclaimed that they must stop the demons in this place. The captain was called out by the knights, who were quickly pierced by attacks. The demon laughed loudly. He cursed, saying that they were too weak. They were the Demon King's knight Astra and the Demon King's knight Gurgum. Gurgum said that he was told that the strongest were in this place. The knight who stood in front of the demons shouted that this was the first squad of the Demon King. Gurgum said that they had to sort this out quickly and return home. Astra said that if they killed everyone, they would definitely be rewarded. They talked about starting with the knight who stood before them. The demon rushed at him, screaming for him to die. Suddenly, the demon's attack was blocked by a knight who appeared in front of him. Yusha asked what the demons were doing in his country. The knight called out to the commander and asked why he did this. The demons heard that he was the commander of the knights. Astra asked if this was the hero who stood in 3rd place. The demons grabbed their weapons, saying that they were lucky because they could put an end to this kingdom right away. Astra said that he was the Demon King's sword and Gurgum was the Demon King's spear. They told Yusha that they would be his opponents today, and then asked if he was ready for this. The demons rushed to attack, saying that they would kill each other. Yusha prepared for the attack. The next moment, the knight struck down 2 demons who could not believe that they had been defeated with one blow. Yusha asked if they knew who the knights were. He called them demonic scum that did not deserve to be called that. The knight behind thought that Yusha was strong. He dealt with 2 higher demons in an instant. Knight Yusha turned around and asked the man if he was okay. He answered affirmatively, saying that thanks to the knight everyone was safe. Yusha thought that was strange. The man ordered the knights to take care of the wounded first. Yusha thought that although they were not weak, they could not attack alone. He stood and thought, when suddenly he looked up. Something landed on the ground, so Yusha assumed that he was not mistaken. On the ground stood a demon in armor, who asked his master for forgiveness for the weight. The demon grabbed the sword and quickly swung it towards the knight. He delivered a powerful blow. Yusha tried to defend himself. The demon cursed the demon. He called him a human being, saying that he did not need him. The demon spoke words about how he had only one task, to find the Demon King. Melia asked the boy if he had really decided to grow a melon. Zeon answered affirmatively, saying that for now he could only afford to plant it. The girl hoped that it would grow big and tasty. Melia put her hands on Zeon's shoulders and asked how the boy felt about meat. Zeon looked at her and replied that of course he did. He asked her why she needed it. The girl ran away smiling, saying that it was almost dark. She wished him good night, holding a book on how to achieve love. Meanwhile, Yusha stood in front of the demons in armor who spoke about what it meant that the guy was the commander of the knights. The knight noticed this dark aura and said that only the Demon King's general could have it. The demon swung and charged at the knight, who blocked the attack with his sword. The demon general told the knight to tell him where they were hiding the Demon King. Yusha asked what the demon was talking about, to which the general replied that he understood. The demon pressed his blades harder and suggested that the knight did not want it the easy way. Yusha resisted with all his might and thought that even if he was one of the generals, why was he so strong? The knight shrugged off the attack and jumped back. The Demon King's general raised his arm to attack again. Yusha thought that not everyone had managed to escape yet. The demon, screaming for the boy to die, dealt a powerful blow. The knight took the blow with his sword and flew back. The commander of the knights called out to him. The demon addressed the hero with the words that he completely understood him. However, while behind him there was a city and people who needed to be protected, the knight could not win. The Demon King's general said that Yusha should value his life because there would never be another one. The boy asked him why he did that because he didn't understand it. The next moment, tears began to flow from the demon's eyes. The demon fell to his knees and raised his hands to the sky, calling out to the Demon King. He asked him why this happened and cried loudly. He clenched his fists as he spoke of their greatest Demon King, the strongest of all demons. He called him the pinnacle's perfection. Yusha looked at the demon with a confused expression on his face and wondered what he was even talking about. He thought he needed to understand. The knight looked at the demon in shock because he couldn't understand why he was getting bigger. The general kept calling the Demon King and asking questions. The knight couldn't believe it because it seemed like the demon had become even stronger due to his emotions. He swung towards the knight, still wondering why the Demon King wasn't coming for him. The general kept shouting about the Demon King and how he couldn't live without him. Yusha thought that if the demon continued like this, he would destroy the entire city. The general shouted loudly about the Demon King, attacking the knight in front of him again. Yusha continued to defend himself. The demon spoke of being his knight, his faithful servant. He shouted that he would be faithful to him until the very end. Yusha looked at the demon and asked if he really called himself a knight. He called him a fool and then asked if the demon had seen himself. The knight exclaimed that he was simply a monster. The demon said that the boy didn't understand anything. He said that for him, the life of these little fish was worth nothing, unlike the life of the Demon King. The Demon King's general said that he was his loyal sword, that he would destroy everything for him. He said that this was the meaning of being a knight. Knight Yusha told the demon that they were very different. He said that they would hardly be able to understand each other. Knight Yusha began to talk about how knights are a shield and sword for ordinary people. He swung his sacred sword and shouted that he would not allow the demon to dishonor the bright name of the knights. The Demon King's general was very surprised. Yusha used the holy sword and his thousand sword technique. The demon was very surprised. The next moment, he was surrounded by a large number of swords. Yusha looked at the demon and said that there were no obstacles for the sacred sword. He said that it would destroy any evil spirit. Thousands of swords quickly pierced the Demon King general's body and his head flew off his shoulders. The knights shouted joyfully that it was a victory. The boy looked at the demon's head and thought that it was not the end. He quickly turned his head and thought that he needed to step aside. A demon's hand flew past the knight, turning into a liquid substance. It began to attack the guy, who defended himself with his sword. The collision between the knight and the demon created a shock wave that destroyed everything in its path. Part of the city was in ruins. The knights were shouting that this was the end. Yusha thought that at this rate the demon would wipe out the entire city. The substance approached and attached itself to the general's head, who began to laugh loudly. After a few moments, the demon came back together. The knight captain said that the demon was recovering. Everything was as Yusha thought. The general was an immortal knight. Yusha thought about what he had read about him in the hero handbook. He was one of the strongest demons. Yusha said that he now recognized him. The demon suddenly noticed something and said that this couldn't be happening. He was looking straight at the guy's sword. Knight Yusha said that he was the holy sword of the Cressilia kingdom. He said that in his hands was the sword that once belonged to the holy hero who destroyed the Demon King. The Demon King's general exclaimed that this could not be. He shouted that stupid people do not even understand the truth. He couldn't believe that some hero had killed the Demon King. He asked the knight if he really believed such nonsense. The general said that the Demon King was alive now because he simply couldn't die at the hands of a human. The demons screamed that they were worthless, unworthy of living. He shouted words that today they would be finished. Yusha thought that it looked like he was in trouble. The general was shouting that the knight was to blame for everything. Suddenly Yusha noticed something because it seemed familiar to him. A huge pillar of fire appeared in front of him, which surprised the demon. The girl said that she just went out to buy groceries, but he ruined her plans. Melia asked with displeasure if the demon would take responsibility if she did not have time to feed her beloved. Knight Yusha recognized the girl in front of him. Melia exclaimed in response that they would talk later. She said that she had to deal with this monster first. The Demon King's general said that it was not funny. The girl looked at him and apologized, saying that he would really die today. She used the fire dragon technique. The demon asked the man if that was all. The girl said that she now understood what his weakness was. She said that it was time to end it. She smiled and said that her love was waiting for her now. Besides, she had no time to talk to him. Melia swung her sword and said that the fire of her maiden heart would help her. After that, she used the technique of the 1,000 fire arrows of the Dragon of Calamity. Knight Yusha shouted at her to be careful. He couldn't even imagine that such a cute girl had such a terrible power. The guy hoped that he wasn't mistaken. He shouted loudly that he would help her. Both heroes rushed to attack the demon. They quickly pierced him with their swords, causing the demon to scream. Knight Yusha finally saw something. He shouted that he would cleanse the darkness. The knight used the 7 stars of divine light technique. The ground from this. Melia exclaimed with delight that this was incredible. The knights began to shout joyfully that they had won, and all thanks to their heroes. Melia turned to the knight with a smile and said that she thought so. He was very strong. She said that he was the pride of the whole country. Yusha thanked her and said that without her help he would hardly have managed. The girl smiled smugly and replied with words about how maybe he was right. She said words about how she was Melia Vermilion herself, the hero of the blazing flame. The knight remembered what the demon had said. The next moment, Yusha quickly opened his eyes. The Demon King's general apologized, saying that his emotions had gone to his head. The knight quickly realized that he was not dead, and Melia became wary. The general said that he admitted that they were very strong. Melia asked what was wrong with the demon. She said that he was thin and skinny, did not look strong at all. The general said seriously that it was now his turn to attack. He thrust his sword into the ground. This caused the entire ground beneath his feet to crack, and a powerful shockwave was created. The Demon King's general said with a calm expression that he was now much stronger than before. Melia, lying on the ground, coughed and said that this couldn't be. Yusha leaned on his sword and thought that they couldn't lose so easily. The general walked towards the knight, saying that he had not taken off his armor for 1,000 years. He turned to the heroes and told them to tell him everything they knew about the Demon King. The knight wondered if 1,000 years had already passed. He wondered who the demon was talking about. He stood up and thought that it didn't matter now. The knight needed to stop the demon here and now. Melia suddenly sighed and said that now they had a chance. The knight looked at the girl in bewilderment. She said with a smile that the best of the best had come. Suddenly, someone called out to them, asking what had happened to them. He said that they could be heard from the other end of the city. Zeon stood next to them. The guy looked at them with a smile. He recognized the demon in front of him and said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The demon was very confused and looked at Zeon, after which he asked the guy if he was his master. Zeon smiled, after which he softly said that so much time had passed, and he could not even think that this demon would still be alive. Melia saw Zeon and loudly shouted at the guy that he should run because this demon is one of the 4 generals of the Demon King, and therefore the guy simply cannot defeat such a strong enemy. Zeon slowly approached the demon and said that the generals seemed to still exist, and he was still among the strongest. He smiled again and said that he was very proud of the demon, Zabel. He came very close and looked into the demon's eyes, after which he said that Zabel had not been particularly strong before, but now he could praise him with all sincerity. Zabel was very shocked and felt wounded. He looked at Zeon and asked why his master was like this. Yusha and Melia were watching this in confusion and trying to understand what these two were talking about. Zeon said with a smile. Zabel took his hand and asked what was wrong with him and whether he was not glad to see his master. He stated that if Zabel had anything he wanted to say, he would be happy to hear it. The demon felt anger and resentment from such an attitude. He bared his teeth, after which he pushed Zeon's hand away with all his strength, which made the guy a little surprised. Zabel pointed his sword at Zeon with displeasure and asked what had happened, because he thought about it every single day. Immediately after that, he started screaming that everything was wrong, and that this man couldn't be him. In ancient times, there was an extremely powerful demon king. It was a demon that had indescribable power. He was in that world where strength determined his power in the world, and one day he appeared, the one who could defeat that demon king. Zabel, covered in his own blood, lay in the rubble of the ruined walls. He coughed and said that he could not believe that he, the king of demons, had been defeated so easily. And at that moment something happened that Zabel simply could not have expected. Zeon came down to him, and the demon said with a smile that he did not think that this day would come so soon. Immediately after that, he said that Zeon should finally kill him and take his place as the king of demons. Zeon looked at him silently. This was supposed to be the last day of Zabel's life, and it would also be the first day and beginning of a new demon king. Zeon looked at him and sighed and said that they seemed to be finished. He smiled and said that Zabel was extremely strong. after which he asked if he would like to become his servant. Zabel looked at Zeon in amazement. After that, all the demon tribes bowed before him and swore unquestioning loyalty to him. They had someone who absolutely everyone was ready to follow without even thinking about it. And now Zabel simply did not understand it. He looked at Zeon, a human, and couldn't understand how such an insignificant person dared to pretend to be his dear master. He swung his sword and asked Zeon who he was, and immediately after that he struck him with all his might. Yusha and Melia froze in horror at that moment, while Zabel looked at the guy who was able to stop his blow with just one hand. Zeon said with a smile that 1,000 years had passed, and Zabel had become noticeably stronger since their last meeting. The demon snatched his sword from the man's grip and jumped back. Zabel was very confused and asked who Zeon was because he could recognize this incredible power. The guy said that he doesn't know at all what exactly Zabel wants, but he can't deny the fact that he really is who the demon thinks about. Zeon said that, unfortunately, he could not fully understand what Zabel was feeling, so he did not know what to say. The demon loudly exclaimed that he could not recognize this person. He said with disbelief that his master simply could not have treated him so cruelly. He shouted that he had been waiting for 1,000 years for his master to rise again. He said that his master would find him right away. And now this man, being a hero, says that he is the king of demons. Zabel did not understand this at all. With all the anger in his soul, Zabel grabbed his sword, and then a storm of black hue began to appear around him. He loudly asked Zeon if he dared to mock him. Noticing this power, Melia loudly called the boy's name, trying to warn him of possible danger. Zabel gathered all his strength around himself, and shouted with great resentment that this was a lie, and he would never recognize Zeon as his master. His skills became more and more intense, causing Zeon to cover his ears with his hands and silently watch as Zabel screamed that this man couldn't possibly be the Demon King. He screamed furiously, but it got on Zeon's nerves a bit, so he lightly slapped him across the face and said that they should continue the conversation without screaming. Zabel flew to the side and began coughing heavily. Zeon looked at Zabel, who was lying on the ground, looking in confusion at the boy who had so easily sent him flying just a moment ago. Zeon was quick to point out that Zabel always loses his true colors when he gets angry. He closed his eyes and calmly said that Zabel had not been a child for a very long time, after which he asked if he had thought about him for that long. He looked at him coldly and said that now he was finally standing in front of him. But Zabel should remember that he was no longer the Demon King, and he could say that he no longer wanted to be one at all. Zabel silently put his hand to his face and looked as if enchanted as Zeon spoke. The guy stated that if Zabel still wanted to be with him, then he should kill him, and then he would promise that the next time he reincarnated, he would definitely regain the title of Demon King. Zabel stared at Zeon for a moment before smiling softly and closing his eyes, apologizing for not recognizing his master right away. He began to rise into the air with his strength and asked if Zeon would regret what he had just said. The guy took a small step back the moment he saw Zabel gathering all the energy around themselves. Yusha closed one eye and took a deep breath, then said that it was almost impossible to breathe normally because of this demon's aura. Melia turned pale from shock and asked if this demon really wanted to do exactly what she had just thought of. Yusha and Melia looked up in amazement, unable to move or do anything about what they saw. At this time, Zabel was gathering a huge dark energy above himself, which quickly took on some form. Zeon also silently watched this, not saying a word. Zabel raised his energy and exclaimed that he was going to put all his strength into making sure that Zeon could start his new life in peace. He said that this was all that he had managed to accumulate over 1,000 years of difficult waiting, and he was going to put it all into one blow to kill Zeon. Immediately after that, a huge flow of power called the Demon Sword, ruler of darkness. Zeon silently watched this power rushing towards him. For a while, he just watched the energy rushing towards him, and then he clenched his hand into a fist. With a satisfied expression on his face, he said that the 1,000 years that Zabel spent saving all this certainly weren't wasted. He was about to attack and said that he was now going to do everything in his power to reward Zabel for his efforts and the strength he had accumulated over this time. Melia and Yusha watched in silence. Even when Zeon ruled the Demon Kingdom, this technique of his was absolutely feared by everyone. Seeing this, Zabel quickly realized that he would not be able to kill him. Zeon aimed his Demon King's blow at Zabel's attack. At that very moment, the demon remembered all the happy moments he had once spent with his master. Zabel took his last breath and thought about what he knew would happen from the very beginning of their fight. The next moment, everything within the radius of this attack was completely destroyed. Melia, who was watching this battle from the side, said in amazement that this simply could not happen. Zeon stood with his fist clenched tightly, his gaze fixed on the demon in front of him, who was barely able to stand on his feet. The dust from the battle began to clear. The demon looked at his king and said sadly that he had never been so wrong. He was badly wounded. Zeon raised his hand and was about to say what the demon had done before. However, Zabel beat him to it, saying that nothing had changed since then. The Demon King's general said that he was now certain that it was him. After his words, he slowly began to lose consciousness and fall. The amazed Zabel, falling next to Zeon with the last of his strength, called the guy in front of him a lord. Zabel's head fell from his shoulders. Zeon reached out his hands, but did not catch him. He simply stared at his general in silence. By this time, Melia was running towards the boy, loudly calling Zeon's name. There were also knights behind the girl. Melia hugged the guy tightly by the hand and joyfully said the words that he was the strongest hero on earth. Zeon was slightly surprised by this. The girl pulled away slightly and asked what they were talking about with the demon. She asked if they had met before. Zeon answered with a slight smile, saying that it had been a long time ago. She wondered what they were talking about. Zeon looked away thoughtfully as the girl explained that she and the knight captain hadn't even been able to scratch the demon. Melia looked at Zeon with worry and asked if he was very strong, which made the boy look at her. Zeon looked at his hand, and then at the broken pieces of chain with a smile. He answered the girl in the affirmative. 10 days have passed since then. In the village of Nana, a cry was heard in a small house. Someone was calling his wife urgently. Zeon's father showed up at the door with severe shortness of breath. Zeon's mother, with a smile on her face, asked what had happened to the man. He pointed excitedly at a photo of his son in the newspaper, telling the woman to look at it immediately. Zeon's mother was very surprised. She called her son with a joyful expression on her face. The man was crying because he could not believe that it was Zeon. The boy's parents were very happy that Zeon had risen in the hero rankings. They cried with joy. They exclaimed that this should be celebrated. Meanwhile, in the royal capital, Zeon walked with Melia. The girl said that she knew that everything would be like this. She said with a satisfied expression that the guy had now surpassed her in the hero rankings. Melia asked what she should do now. Zeon One Punch was now ranked 5th in the hero rankings. The guy looked at the girl and said that since their first meeting, the girl had become much stronger, and soon she would also become taller. Melia asked happily if this was true. Zeon looked around and asked why he had been called to the castle. He assumed that he would be reprimanded for the destruction. This greatly surprised Melia. She exclaimed in response that it was because his strength was attracting attention. She asked Zeon to behave himself. The boy looked at her and replied that she should not worry because he was also interested in today's meeting. Zeon and Melia approached the door and stopped. Melia extended her hand towards the door and asked if she should open it. They entered a room where a large number of people were gathered around a table. It was a round table meeting, a meeting place for the best of heroes, where even the strongest of all heroes would attend. Zeon and Melia were greeted as newcomers. The man with a smile on his face told the boys to sit down at the table. He asked them if they could begin. Heroes are the hope of all mankind. They can be described in only a few words, such as justice and fairness, but the list is endless. But in reality, the difference between a hero and an ordinary person, and this is incredible power. Ruby Dayak, Giant, who was ranked 6th in the hero rankings, thought that Zeon was a famous guy. Also in the room was Sister Noel, the Saint, who was ranked 8th in the hero rankings. Albacesser is a hero who ranks 4th in the hero rankings. Daimedon Magic Bullet in 10th place. Pyro Darkness Apostle of Darkness in 9th place. And Trishman, who was in 3rd place, were at the table. The man said that the boy must be Zeon Ishtar. He asked the boy to sit down. Mr. Hofter, the strongest in the world, who was ranked 1st in the hero rankings, announced with a smile that the roundtable meeting was starting. Zeon looked at them carefully and thought about something. Daimedon laughed and called the guy a newbie, telling him to be careful. He pointed and explained that the chairs in that area made a surprisingly loud noise when they were moved. Zeon took the advice awkwardly. Zeon was wondering who he was. Suddenly, someone asked if everyone was there and then said that they could begin. Princess Betoir entered the room, hoping that everyone was in place. Zeon saw the girl and was a little surprised. The princess noticed that the guy was already there. The princess approached Mr. Hofter to ask if he was at it again. She suggested that they wanted to start without her. The hero awkwardly replied that this was not so. The girl assumed that he wanted to look cool in front of the newcomer. The heroes at the table silently watched what was happening. The princess said that they had gathered today for a reason. She said that the agenda was demons, and that they had begun to actively attack them. She was talking about how they needed to do something before they could begin, while Mr. Hofter stood nearby. Princess Betoir waved her fan, then happily said that it was Zeon one punch. Hofter congratulated the boy on his first visit to the round table, holding firecrackers in his hands. Zeon, Melia, and Yusha sat silently and watched them. The hero exclaimed the words that the guy really didn't like it. The princess was confused when she noticed that the guy wasn't even surprised. She thought that he seemed to be in a bad mood. At that moment, Zeon silently removed a piece of confetti from his hair. Hofter asked the guy if he could at least smile. Melia looked at Zeon with a smile and asked how he liked it. She said that he was the #1 hero. In the background, the princess asked what they should do now, to which the hero replied that the main thing was that the princess had fun. Zeon looked at Hofter and the princess and said that at first he seemed more serious. However, the guy added that he considers him to be very strong. Zeon looked at Melia and asked her what kind of person he was. The girl asked if he was really interested. Mr. Hofter was the holder of the title, the strongest in the world. He earned the trust of the citizens, but appeared as suddenly as Zeon. The hero rose to the top of the rankings very quickly. Melia also said that there used to be an organization called the 9 Heavenly Demon Kings. The organization consisted of the best pillars of the demon realm. Rumors said that they were not inferior to the generals of the Demon King. However, they were never able to reach them. And all because Mr. Hofter alone destroyed them all. The girl looked at Zeon and said that the hero was probably even stronger than the guy. She said that he wasn't given the title of the strongest in the world for nothing. Suddenly, from the other end of the table, Zeon called out to Albuquerque, which caught the guy's attention. The guy put his feet up on the table and said with displeasure that Zeon didn't need to be greeted. Albuquerque looked at the guy with a grin and said that it was immediately obvious that he was going to die soon. Melia explained to Zeon that this was Alba and that he liked to bully newcomers. The boy asked if he was a hero too. Alba was talking about how Zeon suddenly became the center of the universe after he took down one general. He called the guy a country bumpkin, telling him to go dig in the garden beds. Zeon frowned slightly when Alba said that maybe the general was weak, since even the guy was able to take him down. The guy asked the hero what he had just said, saying he hadn't heard. He got a little mad about it. Alba stood up abruptly and pointed at himself, asking if Zeon even knew who he was. He said he was a hero. As he was saying this, Ruby Deeg rushed towards him with her fists. She hit the guy and told him to shut up. She started hitting him and saying that Alba was already tired of bullying the newbies. She screamed that he was finished. Sister Noel and Dai Madon watched with smiles on their faces. Alba screamed at the girl to stop and said that he would not do it again. Ruby Dayak had already raised her fist when Alba screamed in panic that it hurt. Zeon looked at the heroes and asked if the guy would be okay. Melia answered with a smile so that the guy wouldn't worry because everyone here was strong. The girl said that this is Ruby, the giant, who ranks 5th. She said that she is not inferior in strength to Mr. Melia said that Ruby initially became famous in her hometown of Calvalian, and then came to them. Melia sighed and said that it was unfair that she had not been able to rise for a long time. Zeon did not know what the heroes were thinking about now. He realized that the hero rankings were much more interesting than he thought. The princess and Mr. stood by the window and talked about how now that they had introduced each other, they could get down to business. Mr. Hofter, with a serious expression on his face, reported that the small country of Cressilia had fallen. This news greatly shocked the heroes. Sister Noel jumped up and asked if they were joking. The princess replied that of course they weren't. Princess Betoir said that they fought with the demons for a very long time. But even so, they could not resist. Mr. Hufter said that one of the demon tribes began to act the other day. He revealed that their leader's name was Pashtato, under the command of one of the Demon King's generals. The hero said that Cressilia was a very beautiful country with rich nature in all its diversity. He exclaimed words that they must confront them because they cannot just leave them unpunished. Princess Betuar closed her eyes and nodded, saying that demons had recently attacked them and now Cressilia. The girl stamped her foot and exclaimed that now, if the heroes thought they were ready, they must return Cressilia to the people and destroy these demons. All the assembled heroes looked at the princess with serious faces. Meanwhile, Cressilia was in ruins. Demons oppressed people and forced them to work to the point of exhaustion. The man tripped and fell. And because of this, the demon hit him and asked why he was lying down. He was shouting at the man with a whip in his hands to get up. He asked if it was really in vain that he was left alive. The man rose heavily as other people walked up the huge staircase to the high pyramids. People were heading towards the entrance, where someone was shouting that they were building a great temple of Shenpashtet for the sake of the Great One. She shouted at people not to make mistakes or they would die. After that, she thanked them for their work. On the throne sat a demoness who spoke of Zabel's death. She was sorry because she liked him. She rose from her throne and looked at the huge heart, saying that there was nothing wrong with it. The demoness stretched and with a smile on her face said that soon they would come to this place and she would avenge him. Before the mission began, the heroes headed somewhere. Mr. Hofter said that Cressilia is a small country known for its forest resources. They approached the tree. There were rumors that spirits and sacred trees existed in this place. Suddenly they noticed something. The heroes stood on the edge of the cliff, and Mr. Hofter continued to talk about how now nothing remained of its former greatness. He said that they were starting. Mr. Hofter said that they had to help them. Melia, who was standing behind him, said something about how there were only 5 of them. She waved her hand, saying that it was funny that at the most important time, half of the round table was not with them. Darkness sighed and said that it seemed like they weren't familiar with the concept of duty, which caught the hero's attention. He added that there was nothing to worry about because the time of the Holy Scripture had come. He said that apparently fate itself wanted them to do it. The boy spread his arms wide and laughed. Melia thought he was acting very strangely. Mr. Hoffer thought things were bad, and Zeon assumed the boy had eaten the wrong mushrooms. Meanwhile, on the border of Cressilia, the knights were surrounded by mummies. They couldn't understand what was going on. It seemed to them that the monsters could not be defeated. The knight's commander was knocked down by one of the mummies, so he was called out loudly. The other knights were also attacked. One of the knights was shouting at them not to panic because they had to leave. He was shouting that without them many people would die. A knight nearby was shouting at the commander that he couldn't. The man panicked and thought that among the demons they were the most vile and that they could not be killed so easily. He thought that it looked like they were finished. Suddenly someone threw a small vessel which broke the demons. They began to grab their heads and fall. The knight shouted that it was holy water. This was their chance because the demons were immobilized. Suddenly the knight saw Sister Noel, who told them with a smile not to worry. She said that she would now be their shield. The girl approached the wounded knight and healed his wound. The knight asked what the Holy Sister had forgotten on the battlefield. Sister Noel was a canon of the Holy Order and also a pious priestess. She was also a master of sacred magic. The girl could even get a dead person out of the coffin to cure him. Sister Noel, with a smile on her face, said the words that God would bless the knights. The knights looked at their weapons with shock. They said that they were shining. Sister Noel told them that she had blessed their weapons, so now it would be easier for them. A few moments later, the knights prepared themselves, saying that they were now standing up for their sister. They shouted at the girl to stay behind them. The girl was surprised. However, there was something that made Sister Noel different from the other saints. It wasn't sacred magic or healing. She suddenly turned her attention to the knight. Sister Noel approached him and asked if he was hurt too. The boy turned around questioningly. He told the girl that he was fine. The knight told the girl not to waste her power on him. At that moment, Sister Noel said that she would not forgive. The girl stood in front of the knight and said how they dared to touch such innocent people. The knight tried to call out to Sister Noel, who suddenly became gloomy. It was all because of her excessive anger. Sister Noel suddenly shouted furiously, telling them to repent to God. She cursed loudly, and a weapon appeared in her hands. When angry, the girl was prone to violence. A girl began waving her weapon and screaming for the demons to die. She destroyed them all at once. She turned to the knights with a furious expression, asking why they had stood up. She shouted for them to quickly follow her. The knights agreed in fear. The knight approached the wounded man and told him to get ready. At that time, the girl with the knights had already gone off to fight. A large number of mages attacked a huge demon who was saying that he was ticklish. The demon was wondering if this was human magic while the mages were attacking him. One of the soldiers exclaimed that their magic was powerless. The demon looked at them and said that real magic kills in an instant. The demon began to gather energy, saying goodbye to people. Suddenly, someone called him, calling him a doggy. The guy said something about how he hoped he wouldn't be upset. Darkness's feather said the words that fate itself had given him a strong opponent. The knights realized that the hero who was in 9th place. They could not understand what he was doing here. The demon pointed at the guy and asked who he was. Piro grinned, which surprised the demon. Suddenly, the guy jumped off the ledge. The hero jumped so fast that a whistle sounded in the air. He jumped a triple somersault and then a quadruple. Darkness Feather landed gracefully, causing the knights to shout enthusiastically that it was incredible. However, they could not understand the purpose of all this. The demon pointed his cane at the hero in front of him and said that he looked pathetic. He asked Pero Darkness if he really wanted to die. The boy rose to his feet, shaking off his clothes, and called the demon a dog again. He asked if it was time for him to go to the kennel. This statement astounded the demon. The demon furiously shouted the words that he was a soldier of the Great Empress. He shouted that the boy should not dare to insult him. Dark energy began to surround him. The demon said that the guy would answer for his words. She said that she would show him real magic. The 9th place in the hero rankings, the Apostle of Darkness, Pro Darkness, looked at the demon. He had lived an interesting life. The boy was born and raised in a family of loving parents. As a child, he dreamed of becoming a teacher and was always a quiet and calm child. However, according to one heroic tale, the boy's life changed. It all started with weird conversations when he talked about being a fallen angel of the Dark Knight. He then asked when his dinner would be ready. His mother didn't like it. At that time, nothing foreshadowed trouble, until an incident occurred that changed his life. The boy was scratched by a cat, and since then, this scar decorates his left eye. He called this scar a sign and then decided to become a hero, and he really became one. Pero Darkness extended his hand and said words about the demon talking too much for a weakling. Zeon watched the boy, curious. He stood at a distance and watched the battle, saying that the guy was good. At the same time, Zeon was called by Melia, who asked if maybe he could help her. Zeon turned his attention to her and laughed slightly, apologizing. The girl with a serious expression said that she no longer needed it. She quickly swung her sword, saying that it was not for nothing that she had been promoted in the hero rankings. Zeon continued to watch the battle with a smile, answering the girl with the words that then he would not interfere with her, while a fiery whirlwind rose behind him. The boy noticed that he was really strong. He watched Mr. Hofter fight. Mr. Hofter rubbed his forehead and said with a smile that it seemed like everyone was trying their best. He was ranked first in the hero rankings and had the title of the strongest in the world. The knights watched the hero. One of them cursed when he noticed the demon behind him. He couldn't figure out where it came from. Another knight called out to the hero, warning him that the demon was behind him. Mr. Hofter quickly dodged the attack, thanking the knights. The next moment, he delivered a powerful blow to the demon. The knights sighed and shouted words about how, thanks to the hero, they now had a chance to win. Zeon looked at the fighting hero and thought that it was incredible. His physical indicators were much higher than other heroes. Mr. Hofter was finishing off the demon with his attacks. Zeon thought that he didn't feel mana at all. The boy scratched his head and wondered if he was really human. Melia, who was standing behind the boy, asked him if he was really kidding. She pointed her finger at him and shouted words about how they hadn't come to this place to relax, and he was just standing there watching. Zeon looked at the girl in confusion, when suddenly, something caught their attention. The girl looked up in shock. In front of Zeon and Melia stood a huge demon with a weapon. He asked them if they were heroes, to which the boys answered affirmatively. The demon looked at them and then offered them to play. In front of the heroes stood the Chief of Death, Myra Anubis. The next moment, Zeon swung and quickly hit the demon, who flew away with a scream. Melia looked at the guy with a shocked expression and thought that he was definitely not human. Zeon stretched and said with a smile that he agreed that this was not a place for rest. However, he told the girl to see for herself. He pointed his finger to the side, emphasizing this place. He smiled and said that it was not often that one could see pyramids. The girl looked at the structure in front of which they stood in surprise. Zeon and Melia looked at the pyramids with joy. The girl said that up close it was even bigger. The couple quickly set off. Zeon called the girl his bride, inviting her to go and see what was there. The girl was surprised and then agreed. She became embarrassed, blushed slightly, and fell silent, thinking about the fact that the guy called her his bride. The guys went inside the pyramid and started looking around. There was emptiness and a staircase in the center. The guy couldn't believe that this was it. Melia suggested Zeon to go up for now. The guy agreed, saying that maybe something would happen there. Suddenly, someone chuckled and said that the guys had gone too far. Melia was surprised, and Zeon looked at the source of the sound. In front of them sat Pashtato, who was one of the Demon King's generals. She singled out the guy and introduced herself, saying that she was the most beautiful demon on their planet. The demoness smiled and asked Zeon if he liked her. Melia exclaimed from behind the boy that they had already met the general, so he should be careful. The boy agreed with the girl. Pastetto thought for a moment and then asked if they were talking about a goblin. Zeon began to flex his fists, saying that he didn't care who she was talking about. He said that he hadn't come to this place to talk, so he wasn't going to feel sorry for her. The demoness asked the guy in front of her that it was he who killed Zabel and now came for her. Pastetto apologized to her love, saying that she was finished. Melia at this point darkened and grabbed her sword, which attracted Zeon's attention. The boy quickly jumped back because the girl swung her sword. He heard her calling his name, which surprised him greatly. Melia's eyes turned black and she gritted her teeth and said the words that she herself. Melia, her eyes blackened, began to attack Zeon, screaming at the same time that he should die. The boy deftly dodged the attacks. He thought for a bit, and then said that he understood everything. Zeon, dodging the girl's attacks, spoke about what it means for a demoness to be able to control people with a curse. Pastetto chuckled and asked with a smile if the guy really knew what it was. She said he was pretty well informed for a human. She spread her arms and said that in addition to being incredibly beautiful, she was also the best mage among the demons. The demoness said that even if the guy was a hero who had a title, he would still be an ordinary person who would fall under her curse in an instant. Pastetto said that whether it was an incredible warrior or a saint, everyone without exception had a seed of evil in their heart. The demoness, with a smile on her face, said that she was only helping him grow a little. Zeon looked at Melia, not knowing what to do now. After all, if he didn't kill the girl, she would kill him. Melia rushed to the attack, screaming for Zeon to kill her. Zeon was very surprised by this. He continued to dodge the girl's attacks, who said that if he did not, she would kill him. Suddenly, the girl tripped Zeon. The boy fell to the ground and the girl was on top. He thought that she had incredible abilities. However, Zeon could not understand what he was doing. The girl suddenly began to take off her clothes, saying that they should start loving each other. The demoness did not understand what was in the girl's head. Melia was screaming loudly that she loved the boy and that he belonged to her. At that moment, Zeon hit the girl on the cheek. Zeon, with a serious expression on his face, began to hit Melia in the face, saying that she was a strong woman and would definitely cope. The girl came to her senses and asked in shock what she had done. Zeon told her that it was nothing special. He said that she always behaved like that. While the girl stood there panicking, the guy turned to the demoness with a smile. He smugly said that her vaunted curse had passed. In response, she called the guy a fine fellow. She began to rise, saying that he was not one of those opponents who could not be defeated while sitting. Pashtito stood up and asked Zeon with a smile if he would regret making her stand up. She looked at him and thought that there was something wrong with that. The demoness thought that the curse of that woman could not be dispelled by a man. She assumed that the guy might not be a man. The demon's curse also had no effect on the boy. In her entire life, she had never met such a powerful creature. The demoness looked at the guy and asked if he was really human. Melia looked at Zeon with displeasure and asked what to do with him. She said that even demons did not perceive him as human. The guy replied that he was even a little offended. Potato, who was standing near her throne, said that the guy was very strong, which meant he was her type. Her words surprised Melia greatly. The demoness readied her weapon, saying that if Zeon had indeed killed Zabel, it only meant that he could not be left alive. Zeon clenched his fist with a smile and replied that he couldn't let her live either. He asked what they were going to do. The demoness looked at Zeon with a mad smile on her face and replied that she would simply kill him. She began to gather energy, saying that the guy would regret coming to her. Potato said that she was not a simple demon. She told him that she was a demon that had been controlling the dead since time immemorial. She was a demon who was the first and only one to wield curse magic. She exclaimed that the boy could not defeat her. Potato prepared to attack the boys, screaming for Zeon to die. Magic balls gathered around her. Melia was very surprised, and Zeon silently watched the demoness. Potato quickly began to attack them with a death curse, and the boys quickly dodged. The ball was piercing the ground when Melia suddenly shouted for it to stop. The attack quickly began to attack vertically. The girl shouted at the guy to be careful. The demoness stood on the pedestal and laughed, asking the boys if they liked it. She said that they would not be able to dodge. Potato told that since ancient times a curse has befallen those who disturbed the sleep of sleeping kings, not only the living but also the dead. There was no one who could escape the power of the curse of death. The demoness screamed that she could control them as she wished. Melia barely managed to dodge, causing her to scream. She noticed that whatever the black ball touched immediately disappeared. She realized that this was no ordinary curse. The demoness simply wanted to destroy everything. If you get hit directly, you will die immediately. Melia excitedly shouted at Zeon to be careful. She told him that if you get hit by the ball, you will die immediately. Zeon was deftly dodging the attacks at this point. The demoness laughed loudly and asked how much longer they were going to jump. Potato began to create a huge ball, saying that if they enjoyed running so much, they could try to run away from it. Zeon quickly took notice of this. The demoness screamed that they could do nothing with their weak bodies. She cried out for them to die. Melia loudly shouted the name of the guy who was calmly looking somewhere. He suddenly clapped his hands and everything disappeared. The demoness was speechless from shock. Zeon asked her what he needed to escape from. Melia was also silent from shock. Zeon said that he did not know what the demoness was talking about all the time. He assumed that she had overestimated herself. He said with a smile on his face that now she should listen to the wisdom of his father. Zeon's father used to say that the early bird gets the work of three. Potato was confused, as she did not understand anything. Zeon added words that now it was time to put an end to their conversation. The guy quickly approached the demoness with a smile on his face, while Potato screamed in fear. At the same time, Sister Noel was destroying the demons with furious cries. She stood up, saying that she seemed to be finished. The girl suggested that it seemed that everyone would return soon. Suddenly, someone asked a question about where they would all return from. The girl looked down in shock because her leg was tied to the ground. Sister Noel screamed loudly as her feet were tied and raised high above the ground. The knight noticed this and called out loudly to the saint. Sister Noel screamed loudly to be let go. The hem of her skirt was raised high, so she was afraid that the knights would see everything. She tried to hold her skirt, still screaming for the demon to stop. Suddenly, something appeared from under the girl's skirt. Weapons began to fall out of Sister Noel's skirt, and the girl screamed in embarrassment. The knights lowered their heads in shock. Sister Noel cursed because she was so angry. She asked the demon how he dared when she suddenly noticed something. The demon began to be quickly attacked by dark magic, blows of death. Sister Noel started to fall when she was caught by someone's hands, which surprised her. The hero caught the girl. He asked the saint, with a smile on his face, if she was okay. The girl happily called out Mr. Hofter's name. Darkness's feather appeared nearby. He said that the moment the holy bell rang, the seal of salvation would crumble. At that moment, the world would end. This meant that he heard that the girl was in danger, so he came immediately. Darkness's feather said that her heart should burn with holy flame, because the battle was not over yet. He said dramatically that he was almost too late. He tried not to look at her underwear, but he failed. Sister Noel noticed that this guy was here too. She nodded with a smile and thanked the heroes for saving her. Mr. Hofter looked towards the pyramid, saying that it seemed like something had happened there. Darkness said that his heart told him that the main battle was happening there. Sister Noel looked closely and assumed that there was probably a newcomer there. Mr. Hofter replied that this was good and that it was time for them to help. Suddenly, the earth shook, which surprised the heroes. The saint exclaimed that there was something beneath them. The ground beneath them began to rise rapidly. All the heroes quickly jumped back to the other side, very surprised. They looked up in shock. Sister Noel couldn't understand what it was. Meanwhile, Zeon looked out the window, asking about the noise outside. Pastetto was sitting in the rubble laughing. She said that their end had come. Zeon asked if she was still alive. Pastetto replied that she liked the guy more and more. She added words about how she was in a hurry to upset the guy. The demoness said that about 400 years ago, in one of the demon tribes, there was a mad king. Pastetto said that it was a monster whose size was much larger than other demons. It was then that it destroyed the demon king's elite squad. The demoness added that its power was similar to that of the strongest demon king. Patetta clenched her fist with a smile and said that they, of course, were able to defeat him. However, even after many years, no one even came close to his strength. Zeon listened attentively to the story, and Melia, shocked, asked what of it. After all, the monster was dead. Melia asked what was the point of telling them all this. The demoness smiled contentedly and answered with a laugh, so that the girl would think about it herself. She asked why else she was called the Empress of the Dead. She said that he had sworn that he would be her servant. The demoness exclaimed that she was the great Potato who had a servant who was not inferior to the former Lord of Demons. Potato, with a crazy expression on her face, said that this one and only creature was her servant. Melia looked out the window where the monster was and called out loudly to Zeon. She said that it was she who was talking about him. Melia was telling Zeon that they couldn't just stand there. They needed to help the heroes. Zeon suddenly gave a serious negative answer. He said that he thought it was too early for them to go that way. Melia looked questioningly at the guy when the demoness Pastetto began to rise from the floor with a grin. Pastetto looked at the guy, saying that he was not stupid. She said that she was not finished with them yet. The demoness waved her hand and something began to appear behind her. Zeon watched carefully and wondered what it was. Melia asked in fear what she was doing. Suddenly, Zeon realized something in shock. The demoness leaned against the object, saying that it was time to begin. She wanted to eat the heart of the demon king. Potato grabbed the heart and spoke words about how their sacrifice was not in vain. She opened her mouth wide, screaming that they would now become one. The couple watched in shock. Potato suddenly turned into a huge snake and said that now they would fight for real. Melia, with a shocked expression on her face, asked if Zeon knew how to defeat her. The guy said that the demoness looked, of course, incredible. Melia hid behind Zeon in fear. She asked the guy to deal with the snake. The guy looked at her with delight and said that it was simply incredible. The cat turned into a snake. The demoness Pastetto looked at the boys and said that they should feel her greatness, calling them stupid people. She told about how she had received the power and knowledge of the former king. The demoness slapped her tail on the floor, saying that she was the embodiment of the curse. She shouted loudly that she could not be defeated now. Zeon covered the frightened Melia with his hand. Pastetto said that no matter who the guy was, she would kill him in an instant. Meanwhile, a huge demon stood in front of the heroes. Sister Noel exclaimed in shock because she could not understand who it was. Darkness covered his face with his hand, telling the boys to be careful. He said that he felt an unprecedented power in the monster. A huge heart beat inside the demon. Sister Noel grabbed her weapon and asked with a crazy expression who she should be afraid of. She rushed at the monster, saying that he was just a big piece of trash. The saint brandished her weapon, screaming for the demon to taste her Morgenstern while loudly cursing at him. The girl swung and attacked the demon with a powerful blow. She used a holy blow, wanting the demon to die. The next moment, she looked at the monster in front of her with a shocked expression on her face. The blow of her Morgenstern did not penetrate the monster. It entered the demon's body and then flew out with the same force. Sister Noel was greatly shocked. Suddenly, someone stood in front of her, covering her with his body. The saint's weapon was caught by Mr. Hofter, thus saving the girl. She looked at the hero with relief, saying that without him she would have died. Mr. Hofter nodded with a smile on his face and asked if the girl was okay. Darkness shouted for them to step aside. He said words about how the monster could not be defeated by physical force. The girl was very surprised by such words. The hero began to gather energy in his hand, saying that it meant the time of magic had come. He waved his hand, shouting that his dark flame would turn the demon into ashes. Darkness quickly attacked the demon using the technique of dark magic, the Dragon of Death. But he was shocked. The demon opened his mouth and quickly began to absorb the boy's magic. Sister Noel, in shock, screamed the words about the hero's dragon. The demon absorbed all the flames and then began to quickly release them back directly at the heroes in front of him. Meanwhile, Zeon and Melia were attacked by a demoness. The heroes managed to jump away from the attacked place, and the girl called out the guy's name. The boys looked out the window. Melia said that it seemed like a battle had started there. The boy just sighed. Zeon smirked and said that this was the king the demoness had spoken of. He said that they needed to finish this place quickly. Pastetto looked at the guy, saying that he was funny since he wanted to finish quickly. She said that the demon trusted her with his life. She exclaimed words about how it meant that she was one with him. Potato said that thanks to her he now has the same power as in the best times. She exclaimed that the second coming has begun. The demoness screamed words about the guy getting ready to die because no one could stop them. The demoness Pastetto screamed furiously that she and her servant would destroy this entire world. She looked at the heroes in front of her and said that they would start with them. With the heroes who dared to attack her, the demoness opened her mouth wide and began to rapidly gather energy. She used the death curse technique, True Death, to attack Zeon and Melia. Melia closed her eyes in fear, while Zeon was surprised to notice something familiar to him. A moment later, the demoness Pashteto's attack destroyed part of the pyramid, flying out from the other side. There was no longer a roof over Zeon and Melia's heads, only debris fell in different directions. The girl asked in shock what just happened. Melia looked at Zeon with concern on her face, calling his name. She noticed that something had happened to him. The guy just sighed and his hand turned completely black. Melia asked the boy with concern what was wrong with his hand. Zeon told her not to worry, saying that everything was fine. Zeon looked ahead and with a serious expression clenched his fist, saying that it was time to begin. The girl thought about his blackened hand, assuming that the guy was lying. She thought about how last time there wasn't even a scratch left on him. Zeon looked at the demoness and said that he liked her. He noted that her words about destroying the world were definitely not a lie. He looked at Pastetto with a smile. The demoness answered the guy, saying that he surprised her. The demoness said that the blow she dealt was supposed to wipe the guy off the ground. She asked Zeon who he was anyway. The guy laughed in response. The guy closed his eyes with a smile on his face because he was glad that he had a title. Zeon confidently replied that he was ranked 5th in the hero rankings. He introduced himself as Zeon One Punch Ishtar. Zeon pointed his finger at himself and said with a smile so that the demoness would remember him. Pashteto's asked the guy about the 5th place. She asked if they really had fools sitting there for distribution. The demoness exclaimed that the guy was not weak. She said that she would remember this man. She looked at the guy and offered him to continue their battle. Meanwhile, Darkness and Mr. Hofter were fighting the monster. The demoness said that the guy could forget about his comrades because nothing could break through her servant. The demoness Pastetto said that he would never lose. She said that it would be an unequal battle with children and nothing more. Zeon scratched his head and apologized for interrupting her. He pointed towards the window and said that her honored servant was about to lose. The boy's statement surprised the demoness greatly, so she opened her mouth in shock. Mr. Hofter said that he seemed to understand everything. He waved his hand to Sister Noel and Darkness. The hero, with a smile on his face, turned to the boys, telling them to step aside, covering them with his hand. Zeon raised his blackened hand and said that he was surprised too, because humans are much stronger than one might think. The guy clenched his fist tightly and said that he himself had not yet fully understood what it was like to be human. He thought seriously, saying that time would show everything anyway. After that, he asked if he was right. At that moment, his hand, which had turned black, became normal again. The boy smiled and told the demoness to come to him. He offered her to finish their business, which greatly surprised Pastetto. She thought with great shock about what had happened. She could not understand what was wrong with them. She began to create a magic ball again, calling them arrogant humans. The The demoness thought it was better to finish them right now. Pestetto spoke of the Titan's blow that shook the demon world and her gray curse. She suggested seeing how long people could last. The demon used the Titan's iron hammer to fight Mr. Hofter, and the demoness used the death curse. Zeon responded with his fist. Mr. Hofter pierced the massive demon with his justice strike, flying straight through the monster. Zeon, however, was able to defeat the giant snake demoness with a simple blow from his fist, which hit her right in the head. The demoness was hit by a powerful attack, causing her to cough violently. She didn't even have time to understand anything. The body of the stricken demoness lay in front of Zeon. Melia approached him, calling the boy's name. She said with a joyful expression that she was glad that the boy was okay, while Pestetto lay silently nearby. Zeon looked at the defeated demoness. He extended his hand to her and said with a smile that she was strong. The guy almost fell in love with her. He suddenly laughed, saying that he was joking. He said that she was still far from the Demon King, of course. Pestetto asked the boy with her last strength what he wanted to say. Zeon stood in front of her and thought that if they had met 1,000 years earlier, everything would have been different. A girl's cry was heard from the half-ruined pyramid, calling out Zeon's name. She asked the guy with a little excitement about what just happened. Zeon looked at the girl and asked what she was talking about. Melia replied with displeasure that she was talking about what he had just said. She exclaimed that the guy had almost fallen in love with her. Zeon scratched his head awkwardly when he realized what the girl was talking about. He raised his finger and replied with a smile that the demoness had been faithful to her cause until the very end, despite all the difficulties. That was what he liked about her. Melia was shocked by this. The girl asked Zeon excitedly what about her. She asked if he had already forgotten about her. Zeon replied that of course not. Melia listened attentively to Zeon, who said that the girl had a huge number of advantages. Zeon said that he really liked Melia too. The girl was stunned by the guy's words and then blushed from intense embarrassment. She screamed and grabbed her red face. Zeon thought with a smile that he had always dreamed of having such a subordinate. Suddenly, someone said that the guys seemed to have finished. The rest of the heroes approached Zeon. Zeon turned towards them, and Mr. Hoofter happily congratulated the guys on their victory. Zeon responded by saying that it was true. It could be said that they had now completely won. Suddenly, Zeon remembered something. He wondered if Mr. Hofter had really defeated the Titan with his bare hands. Mr. Hofter put his hand on Zeon's shoulder and said that it was great because the boy had already defeated 3 of the Demon King's generals. The hero said words that the guy interested him even more. Zeon looked closely at Mr. Hofter, who addressed him by name. Mr. Hofter asked Zeon if he would always be on their side. The guy lowered his head and confirmed the hero's words with a smile. Meanwhile, someone flew to the land of the Demon King. One of the demons met a bird, which reported that Pestetto had fallen. This news greatly surprised the demon. There were cries and questions about how she could have fallen. The demon screamed that this was nonsense. He couldn't believe the news because they had lost another general. The demon was cursing at these stupid people while Eritreus was laughing behind him. Eritreus adjusted his glasses and said that he was right about the man after all. The demon next to him asked furiously what the goblin was talking about. The demon began to lament, saying that if he had only known, he would not have let the demoness go alone. He cried for his beloved cat. Goblin Eritrea looked at him and thought that everything was clear with him. After this, the demon looked at Eritreus and told him to follow him. The goblin adjusted his glasses and asked where they were going. The demon cried out decisively that they must take revenge on them while Eritreus stood behind. Goblin Eritreus listened in panic as the demon screamed that this was undermining the authority of all demons. Suddenly, a voice was heard that greatly surprised the demon. It spoke words that the time had come. It said that there was some truth in the demon's words, so they could not tolerate this any longer. The demon looked up, not knowing what to do. The huge demon in front of him told him to gather the entire army, everyone he could. The demon told him to destroy the country of heroes. Meanwhile, in the Trishulia castle, someone entered the hall and everyone was told to be silent. The knight reported that a hero was coming who had single-handedly defeated 3 of the Demon King's generals. The other knights whispered and said it was disgusting. They assumed he was trying to curry favor with this newcomer. Zeon 1 hit, Ishtar was now ranked 3rd in the hero rankings. The guy looked around and thought about how he didn't need to be called for such a trifle. Princess Betwar pointed her fan at the boy, calling his name. She said it was magnificent. The girl said with a wide smile that one day he would become the greatest hero of humanity. The princess excitedly said that she was looking forward to the day when Zeon would become the best. The boy yawned, covering his mouth with his hand, while the princess said that he was now in third place. This meant that first place was just around the corner. Her Highness closed her eyes smugly and said that Zeon could ask whatever she wanted for the protection of the human race. Zeon waved her off with a bored expression, saying that he didn't need anything. He told the girl not to invite him to that place again. The princess called out to Zeon in a panic and asked him not to leave. She quickly ran up to the guy and offered to talk to him for a while first. He exclaimed that Zeon couldn't leave empty-handed. Zeon turned to the princess and asked why he wanted to do this. Princess Beichuor agreed with him, but added words about him taking at least a small reward. She asked Zeon with a smile on her face what he was interested in, money or maybe land. Zeon thought about it, saying that his current home was completely satisfactory. The guy was silent for a while and then remembered something. He looked at the girl with an inspired smile and said that he had thought of something. Zeon's mom and dad asked with joyful faces if all this really belonged to them. The boy's father could not believe his eyes. The parents stood in front of a huge building. It could be called not a house, but a whole castle. The man said that their house was tiny compared to this. The woman added that it looked more like a tavern. Zeon's father adjusted his glasses, saying that, be that as it may, they are very grateful to their son. Meanwhile, night had fallen. Melia was sitting at the table thinking about something. She was embarrassed that Zeon was now starting to notice her. When a guy told her to watch her step, a girl thought he was telling her to be careful. And when he said he was covered in sticky liquid and would need to wash up at home, she took it as a declaration of love. Melia imagined Zeon confessing his love to her and saying that he wanted to be with her for the rest of his days. Although he didn't say that, the girl still happily shouted that she wanted to be with him too. Melia closed her eyes dramatically, addressing Zeon. She was saying that she wasn't ready yet. At that moment, the girl realized something. The heroine sat down by the bed, saying that it was time to get down to business. She believed that it was necessary to act while there was a suitable moment. The girl took something out and told Zeon to get ready. She said that today his life would change dramatically. After some time, Melia stood in front of the doors and prepared herself. She thought that it was time, reaching out her hand to the door. Melia opened the doors and walked in, throwing off her blanket. She happily wished the guy a good night and said that she wanted to show him something. At that moment, she opened the door and froze in shock. The girl screamed loudly because Sister Noel and Pero Darkness were in the room at the table. Two pairs of eyes turned their gazes on the girl, who began to cover herself with great embarrassment. She shouted words about everything burning with a bright flame. After some time, the window was fixed and the girl got dressed. Melia asked the guests what they were doing in this place. Sister Noel replied that she was the one who wanted to ask that question. She asked Melia what she was doing in that place dressed like that. Zeon looked at the girl and added words about how it was still cold at night. He told Melia not to catch a cold. Melia began to stutter in embarrassment and then exclaimed that the guy should not say anything. The saint told the girl to eat too before the food got cold. She said that she had recently been to the castle. She wanted to invite Mr. Number 1, but he refused, saying he was busy. She added that, at least for now. Melia thought about these words and then asked Sister Noel why she was not invited. The saint answered that she wanted to. However, then she heard hellish sounds and she changed her mind. Melia then shouted that she loved Zeon. She answered embarrassedly that the saint must have misheard. Melia looked at Sister Noel and said that in everyday life, she was a little different. The girl laughed and replied that she was just drunk and all the devils were coming out of her. Sister Noel, sipping her drink, suggested dropping the subject. She suggested remembering how Mr. and Zeon fought. The girl said that it was the first time she saw Mr. fight. She said that he showed himself to be a real hero and that is not up for discussion. The saint looked at her drink and said that Pistato was definitely not weak. Even without seeing her, the girl felt her power and greatness. She looked at Zeon and said that he had dealt with him in one blow. The girl added that he was definitely not inferior in strength to Mr. Darkness was of the same opinion. The power he felt around the boy was simply cosmic in proportions. Melia laughed contentedly and told them to be afraid of him. She believed that he would soon become the strongest in their country. Zeon asked why she was so proud of that. Sister Noel laughed and called the boy slow-witted. She asked if Zeon had a girlfriend he loved. Melia panicked and asked why the girl was talking about it. Darkness's feather thought that a fallen angel had descended from heaven. This meant that she understood everything right away. The saint replied that it was a good opportunity to talk. She asked if Melia thought the same, which surprised the girl greatly. Zeon suddenly said that if it concerns Melia, then he likes her and he already said so. Sister Noel asked Melia what was wrong with her. Zeon panicked and assumed it was because of the vegetables he had given her. Darkness thought that their knowledge was still locked in space, which meant they were just stupid. After some time, the guys met at the entrance to the room and spent some time talking. It was getting late, and Sister Noel and Pero were getting ready to go back. The sober girl smiled and said goodbye to them, after which she said that she was very grateful for the time they had given them. Pero also said that their destinies were intertwined. What he meant was that he hoped they could sit like this again in the future. Melia and Zeon waved to their friends as they left. The girl took a deep breath and said that they had a lot of fun. Zeon also smiled. Afterwards, Melia turned her gaze to him and said admiringly that the food he had prepared was simply delicious. Zeon smiled proudly and said that it was only natural, since it was a magnificent stew made from vegetables he had grown himself. Melia followed him and said that she, of course, knew about it. But they really turned out to be good people. Zeon turned and asked, confused, what she meant. The girl said that before they were just a sister and some strange guy to her, but today she was able to get to know them from a completely different side. She looked at him and said that, in fact, she had realized a lot for herself. But deep down she believed that she could become the strongest and eradicate all evil, and, perhaps, she was still destined to simply help others and not be the first in her business. Zeon laughed sweetly and said that it was great. Suddenly, Melia interrupted him again and said that he probably didn't even suspect it, but it was all thanks to incredible people like Zeon himself or Mr. Zeon sighed and pointed at Melia's nose, telling her to be careful about what she said because she might get a nosebleed again, and the girl angrily yelled back at him, saying that she already knew that. She blushed and clenched her fist angrily, saying that she actually wanted to praise him. Zeon laughed and apologized to her. Melia sighed and said that Zeon was incredibly rude, after which she added that he was, in fact, strange, and she still sometimes wondered if he was even human. Afterwards, she smiled and said that even if he was a demon, he was still very strange. Hearing this, the guy laughed. The girl said that Zeon had already defeated 3 of the demon generals, and the ones who were defeated by him were Pachetto, Goblin, and the demon who was only half-dressed. Melia stated that if he were a human or a demon, he would have definitely shown the world his full power, and that was already a good indicator. She also said that he already knew that Mr. was the strongest, but he still couldn't meet the one who ranks second in the hero rankings. The second place was Deakengia, the great sage of Parmala. Zeon thought about it and agreed with the statement that she was not present at the previous meeting of the strongest. The girl said she would start with a map. The country of sages was Brunareg, the foundation of Teikoku. The country of dragons was the kingdom of Okoku Trishulia. The United Nations of Calvinon, consisting of other states and small ones. These were the 3 foundations he should know. She also spoke of the great sage Parmala, who was born in Brunareg, the magic kingdom. She is the governing body of humanity. She is even called the guardian or trump card, along with Mr. The girl also said that, of course, there is another creature that is the Demon King. She stated that the Demon King sits on top of the world, and perhaps he is even the strongest of them all. She sighed and said with a smile that she didn't even know if Mr. or Zeon himself could defeat the Demon King. The guy remained silent, and the girl said that this is exactly how one can measure the power of this creature. After that, she asked Zeon if he knew the reason why Denus was called the legendary hero. Without waiting for his consent, she said that he was the only one who managed to reach the Demon King. Because now no one can do it. Zeon sighed with a smirk and said that he couldn't be sure, since Melia talked too much about the Demon King. He said that even if he was a Demon King, he was still just a great supreme ruler of his time, and the history of Demon Kings spanned tens of thousands of years of long history, and now the current Demon King was just a grain of sand. With a smile on his face, the young man said that in their vast world right now, it meant nothing, and perhaps there was a much greater demon lord than the one currently ruling. She asked him what he was getting at with a tense smile. As he started to walk forward, she grabbed his arm and told him to stop, because if he existed, they were in big trouble. Zeon laughed and said he was just adding that as a side note. He said with a smile that perhaps if he had met such good people as Melia in his time, then perhaps he would not have decided to die so easily. The girl pulled away in confusion and asked what he was talking about. The guy laughed and said that it was nothing important and she shouldn't think about it. He stated that even with such problems, humanity was still not extinct, and then asked her if this was true. The girl said that he was right, of course, but she had doubts about his thinking. The young man stepped forward with a smile and said that the heroes simply should not stop believing in their victory and go to the end, just like when Melia joined Zeon. The girl punched him in the shoulder and said that he was too talkative for a simple newbie. Zeon smirked and asked if he was right. At this moment, a loud scream was heard in the city. The demons looked ahead in horror and could not believe what they saw with their own eyes. All the demon kings in history have moved forward. Ordinary demons were afraid and did not understand at all what such powerful creatures were doing in such a place. Suddenly, a voice came from behind them, saying that these were the 4 devil kings. Someone walked forward with extreme confidence and said that in ancient times their world was completely different. But humanity destroyed those of them who were at the top of their world. The demons screamed in terror as they looked at those in front of them. The Devil King, the Ema King, the Rima King, and even the May King were gathered there. There was also a Demon King, who was Zeon in the past. The Devil King bowed deeply and said that they had been waiting for a long time for the true Demon King. The boy smiled and asked when this false king had ever gained enough courage to command them. Zeon stepped forward and said that they are the real kings, so they should show it to the world. Early in the morning, Melia opened her eyes a little heavily and rose slightly from her bed. She woke up earlier than she had planned. The girl went into the bathroom and filled a glass with some water, after which she washed her face and finished the water procedure scheduled for the morning. The girl picked out some nice clothes and tied up her hair. She was quite excited that day. Today there was a beautiful blue sky and a bright sun stretching over the capital. Melia, beautifully dressed, stood on the street with a smile and waited for someone. She thought that she was just waiting for her loved one, but her heart was already beating at an incredible speed. She was thinking that she was extremely interested to know how soon Zeon would arrive. Suddenly, someone recognized the girl and joyfully called her name. At that time, someone waved his hand to her and said that she had arrived quite early. Melia happily turned towards the voice, immediately recognizing it as Zeon. Smiling broadly, the guy approached her and apologized, after which he asked how long she had been waiting for him. The girl sweetly said that everything was wrong, and she had just arrived. Zeon smiled widely and said that this was just great. This girl's name was Melia Vermilion, and today, together with the man she really likes, she is going on her first date in her life, and it should be just perfect. Together, the boys approached a small stage on which stood a rather old man with a shovel in his hands. He said with a smile that his guests should split into pairs of 2 people. When everyone stood in pairs, the man said that now they should all take one shovel and go straight to the beds. Melia looked at Zeon in confusion and pointed to the side, then asked the guy what this was. Zeon, however, said quite honestly that this was the most common competition for the company of potatoes, then asked what was wrong with it. Melia's face darkened as she stared at him silently. Zeon sat down and looked at her, then said that it seemed like they were supposed to participate in pairs, and so he was very glad he had invited her along. The girl was very upset, but she didn't show it and said that she understood and thanked Zeon. She thought that she was very stupid to believe a crazy vegetable lover. Zeon handed the girl her shovel. She looked at him and asked what was so special about it. It was just some kind of village fun. Zeon, genuinely surprised, asked what she was talking about. He asked if she really didn't know anything about the potato company competition. He said that such competitions bring together the best farmers who grow sweet potatoes to fight in the final battle. In short, it involves real giants of production, and therefore weak farmers with little potato power do not even risk showing up in this place. She asked in bewilderment what this potato power even represents. Suddenly a loud laugh was heard. Melia immediately turned to the source of the sound with displeasure. Someone was laughing and talking about how this stupid guy decided to bring a girl here. Two tall men were shouting that the competition was not an easy game and that the stupid newbies should sit in the cafe and eat their parfights. Melia was annoyed by this, while Zeon just looked at them silently. Suddenly, someone else's foot stepped nearby. Someone checked the soil, after which he said that the standards for digging sweet potatoes in the capital, as he saw, had noticeably declined. Two guys with glasses, similar to each other, came forward. One of them took a handful of earth in his hand and said that the humidity, temperature, and condition of the soil, according to calculations, were very good. His brother, making calculations, were very good. His brother, making calculations, said that their chances of winning were 100%. Zeon looked at them in admiration and could not stay on his feet because he had never seen such incredible strength of potatoes before. The boy fell to his knees and told Melia to be careful because they were not as simple as they might seem. The girl looked at him and asked if he would tell her what this potato power was. The man laughed loudly and told the boys to try hard and do at least something to avoid embarrassment. Zeon rose from his knees and said that there was no easy way to defeat them. The host exclaimed that on that very note, the 103rd potato digging competition was declared open. Melia looked at Zeon in bewilderment and asked if he was really joking about this. Immediately after the announcement of the competition, a fierce battle began in which each side applied maximum effort to digging up potatoes. At one point, Zeon was quite tired, but someone extended a helping hand to him. It was one of the men with whom he had competed. Zeon grabbed his hand and they looked at each other, wanting to win equally. Finally, after a few moments, the host's whistle blew. The man said that he was now ready to announce the winner of the 103rd potato digging competition. Everyone fell silent, nervously waiting for the results to be announced. The host announced that Ishtar, who hailed from Village X, and Milady Melia, who was on the same team with him, took first place in the competition. Zeon exclaimed happily, while Melia was very surprised by the first place. The guys slowly walked out onto the low stage, where the host was already waiting for them. Zeon was proud of himself, while Melia couldn't get over the shock. With a smile, the man said that as a prize, Zeon and Melia would receive their well-deserved winner's trophy and a golden seed yam. Zeon looked at it with admiration and said that only the winner could touch it. He was truly delighted with this legendary sweet potato. He was saying that with him, he would definitely be able to take his artificial selection to a new level. Melia sighed and thought that the guy was practically jumping for joy. She thought that it was no big deal even though it took her day off. She brushed away the small amount of dirt that remained on her. Suddenly, Zeon called the girl's name. When she turned to him, he said that it had been a tough fight and that he would never have been able to do it alone. He thanked Melia and warmly expressed how glad he was that she was his partner. The girl was surprised and blushed a little, after which she awkwardly agreed and took the hand he extended to her. She wondered what was wrong with her, because it was the first time she felt so happy as she did at that moment. Suddenly, loud cries were heard that the alarm had started. Someone was shouting loudly that the matches they had already prepared for the jacket potatoes had gotten wet due to an accident. The men who were participating in the competition were screaming loudly and panicking, asking what would happen to their main course. The guy with glasses said tensely that the chances of restoring these matches were 0. Melia noticed the panic and disappointment of the crowd, so she turned to them and asked in confusion what had happened. She raised her hand and said that she didn't really understand anything about what had happened. She waved her fingertips, after which the fire caught fire. The girl asked if this would work. Everyone around was very happy and shouted that Melia was a real goddess. After a while, she and Zeon sat on a bench and talked. Melia asked how this happened, since she had prepared so hard for their date today. Zeon took a small bite of his potato and looked at Melia in confusion, asking what kind of date she was talking about. The girl was confused and said that there was nothing wrong with that, and that was not what she had meant initially. Zeon thought seriously about Melia's words about a date. The girl was shocked and did not understand at all whether it was really unclear to him or whether it was some kind of joke. Melia blushed and said that it was exactly like that, and it was a date. She said that a date is when they meet with a person they like and spend a good time together, and they also eat delicious food. Listening to her, Zeon smiled sincerely and said that in that case, it was good. The girl looked at him in bewilderment. With a big smile on his face, the guy said that today was their first date. Looking at the guy, Melia couldn't help but let blood flow from her nose. It was Melia Vermilion's first date, and it ended in complete success for her. She kept thinking how great it would be if every day was like this. The men who were participating in the competition were very confused when their goddess collapsed, so they immediately called a doctor. At this time, thunder rumbled in the castle. The Devil King declared that the one she had sent was very late. Gungar ran to the girl who was sitting on his friend's back and said that he was already here. The Devil King said that she seemed to be in the house of a magical family, so she was wondering why they couldn't even serve tea properly. Gengar was shaking with anger, but he still apologized to her for making her wait. The demon said that everyone there was just talentless. She asked the demon if his name was Gungar, and then smirked and said that she had nothing better to do, so they should have fun. The demon was furious at how unpleasant she was. He couldn't refuse her, so he just had to endure it, thinking that he had to endure this kind of treatment. The demon queen Hesasuka stepped forward and told the Devil King that if she was so bored and had nothing to do, then she didn't see why she didn't go visit Nagaraja. Tsukubachi sighed and asked what that meant, before adding that he was so impenetrable that she simply couldn't stand him. After that, she grinned widely and said that, besides, if they both left, it meant that people wouldn't be able to get their messages. She asked where she was wrong. The girl looked at her silently for a while, then asked what news she was talking about. The Demon King said it was obvious. At this time in the Empire, Nagaraja stood and watched his opponent, who was hovering in the air above him. The demon told them that he could easily defeat them all and crush them into powder alone. At the same time, the hero in second place in the ranking, Great Sage Parmela, was bleeding right in front of him. The demon slowly walked forward, saying that the moment he first heard that the strongest hero could be good, he was in anticipation. He came even closer and pressed down on the hero with all his might, pushing him into the ground. He said that this was an incredible disappointment for him. The hero coughed up blood, unable to do anything. Nagaraja came even closer and said that if the sage was a warrior, then she should accept his power with honor. The girl rose from the ground with difficulty, thinking that he was too strong. She could only compare this power to the Demon King. The girl rose from the ground, holding her staff in her hands. She apologized to him and said that she, unfortunately, was famous for her incredible stubbornness and that, in all fairness, it would be worth leaving it until the battle with the king. But for him, she did not mind. Immediately after this, a huge comet appeared above them. It was forbidden magic, meteor fall. The girl exclaimed that if she died, he would die with her. Nagaraja said he understood and then said that it was great, but he had his reasons too. He clenched his fist and said that he was not taking back his words. Immediately after that, the demon picked up all his weapons. The first was the magic sword, followed immediately by the holy sword. After the holy sword, he took the heavenly sword, and the last was the divine sword. The demon raised his four arms with weapons and said that as many swords would unite into a single invincible blade. Immediately after that, he swung all his arms, using the Nagaraju technique, the May Rain Meteor Slash. The sage's incredible attack began to crumble into many small pieces in an instant, while she silently watched it, unable to say anything. He said that he had already said this. He lowered his sword and said that he was extremely disappointed with this battle. The girl only had time to move her gaze when, in the blink of an eye, her head fell from her shoulders and life left her bodily vessel. The demon lifted her head by her hair and sighed, then said that he had only soiled his hands in vain. He looked at the head and wondered if this was the hero who was the second strongest. He also noted that the level of the locals had become low. Nagaraja thought that there was no point in him staying here and they should start destroying this world and then move on to destroying the next one. Melia turned to Zeon in shock and asked what he meant when he said that his parents were coming to visit him. The girl was very surprised. Melia silently looked at the guy, waiting for his answer. Zeon calmly said that everything was exactly as he said and they would come there soon. He told him that his parents would really like to see the capital's sights. The girl screamed loudly and asked if he was serious, and she was curious to know why he didn't tell her about it at least a little earlier. Zeon looked at the girl in bewilderment and asked why he needed to tell her about his parents' arrival. The girl tensed up and thought that this was necessary in order to introduce her to her parents. The girl thought that this was an extremely obvious thought, but she could not voice it because she was very embarrassed. Suddenly, Zeon smiled and said that they also wanted to see how their son was handling his title as a hero. He picked up a neat pair and said that it didn't matter whether he could handle it or not, because he didn't plan on showing them anything heroic anyway. He looked at the pair and said that he had already told them many times that he was not fit to be an assistant to either Melia or everyone else around him. The girl looked at him and asked if he really thought so. She said that she couldn't fully understand what he thought about himself, but she couldn't deny that he had already become a wonderful hero. The guy looked at Melia with admiration after these words. The girl was thinking about what she could give him to prove her words when suddenly several children ran up to them and attracted attention to themselves. The boy looked at Zeon and asked if his name was what he thought it was. The girl next to him exclaimed in admiration that he was the third strongest hero in the ranking. The children were very nervous. The boy looked at them in bewilderment, leaned over, and then said that everything was exactly like that, and he was Zeon. Hearing this, the children were very happy and looked at each other. They were extremely delighted to see the real Zeon in front of them. The boy exclaimed that he admired him very much, and his little sister supported his views. After these words, the little girl next to him shook her head in agreement. Melia looked at the delighted children with a smile and asked why they didn't shake the hand of the third most powerful hero. The boy looked at the hand that Zeon hesitantly extended to them in amazement. The child was delighted that in front of him was a hand that had held a weapon not so long ago. The girl joyfully shouted that after him she also wanted to shake Zeon's hand. When the children shook his hand, they, happy that they were able to shake his hand, ran away from there, and Zeon and Melia said goodbye to the children with a smile. The girl looked at Zeon and noted that he was not that surprised by this. He looked at her, then smiled awkwardly and said that everything was wrong and he was just shocked, since this was the first time he was told such a thing. She was surprised and asked if it was true. Zeon looked at his hand as Melia spoke about how heroes with his strength were admired by many. At that moment, Zeon remembered the time when he sat on the throne of the Demon King. Zabel, who was standing next to him, said that for his master, admiration alone was not enough. The demons spoke of how Zeon's power instilled in them a genuine sense of awe, and along with it, great respect. He said that all this was because none of them were able to take the place of the Demon Lord. Zeon just listened to him silently at that moment. At the moment, he was thinking about this admiration, which flattered him. Melia clapped her hands and said that now they needed to prepare for the arrival of his esteemed parents. The guy was a little confused, but quickly agreed. Melia spoke admiringly about how she, as a future daughter-in-law, simply had to make the best first impression. Zeon, however, looked at her in bewilderment and did not quite understand her words about her being his daughter-in-law. The girl completely surrendered to her fantasies, when suddenly a strange voice was heard saying that the guys were here. Zeon and Melia immediately turned to the source of the voice. Sister Noel and Pero Darkness approached them, looking rather tense. The girl exclaimed to the boys that they were in trouble. Sister Noel leaned over to catch her breath while Melia asked somewhat anxiously what was wrong, as they both looked extremely ill. Noel immediately stood up and loudly exclaimed that they had an emergency. She quickly said that the entire Brunelec Empire had been completely destroyed by the enemy and razed to the ground. Melia exclaimed that this could not be because one of the extremely strong heroes was already in Bronereg. Suddenly, the girl turned pale and asked if she was right in her assertion that Parmela should be there. Sister Noel hung her head awkwardly and said that, in fact, she went on to say that if what they had already been told was to be believed, then Mrs. Parmela had also died a cruel death. Melia said that it was just terrible, after which he had a question about who they could be dealing with if the enemy was so strong. Zeon looked at Sister Noel and asked if this was the same Parmela who was ranked second. Melia exclaimed that she did not believe it, and it was simply impossible for such a thing to happen to Parmela, who was in charge of Brunereg. Immediately after that, Melia asked in a panic about what was happening to Mr. Sister Noel quickly said that he immediately went to a state neighboring the Empire. The girl clenched her fist and said that if Bruneleg had fallen, they could not waste their time there any longer. Melia turned and immediately called Zeon by name. She told the boy that they needed to prepare for battle right now. Zeon looked straight up at the sky as he firmly refused her words. Melia asked him in confusion what he was saying and how he could refuse. By this point, many eyes were already looking up at the sky. Melia also looked up when Zeon firmly said that they already had things to do where they were at the moment. Light waves were heard in the air which quickly began to take on a dark shade. This continued until the silhouette of an object flying over the city was clearly visible. Residents in a panic asked what it was. Melia was as shocked as everyone else. She didn't understand how this object could appear out of nowhere. At this time, there was a demon on a large ship, laughing loudly and saying that everything was just wonderful. He shouted that all these people should watch carefully because he was showing them his most precious invention. This demon was the fourth demon general, Eritrea Goblin. The demon concentrated his attention, then loudly shouted that this was just the perfect disguise to sneak behind enemy lines. Then he pointed at Gungar, who was pedaling hard. The demon said that they also had a one-of-a-kind, high-performance magical device on board. He said that it was simply wonderful. Gungar was sweating and trying to figure out why he got the job, while Eritrea Goblin smiled broadly and exclaimed that this was an incredible, simply amazing project. Suddenly, someone's voice was heard. Someone told these guys that they, it turns out, can even do something useful for them. Tsukubachi looked around with great interest. The Demon Queen said with a smile that this world, although not the best, they should quickly destroy it and then go to the next one. Nagaraja quietly said that he was bored and that they should figure it out too, because it would be much faster. Eretria was confused when he saw them. Melia turned pale and asked Zeon if this was really that same Eretria. The guy quietly agreed, then looked up sternly and said that there was definitely someone else there besides him. At this time, Sister Noel was doing everything she could to evacuate the people. She was shouting loudly at the residents to leave quickly. People were running in panic in all directions. Suddenly, several bright flashes appeared in the sky on the enemy ship, which quickly acquired the silhouettes of two demons rushing to the ground at full speed. They quickly landed on the ground, their bodies breaking the tiles on the ground. Zeon, Melia, Noel, and Pero Darkness looked on in shock at what was happening. Two majestic demons emerged from the cloud of dust that appeared after the explosion. The girl said that they were already nearby and she meant their dear and rather weak heroes. The Demon King of Menace, the Divine Sword, Nagaraja, told her that she shouldn't mock her enemies because it didn't suit her at all. The Demon Queen of Evil, the Drunkard, Tsukubachi, sighed and told him that he shouldn't be so serious. The girl licked her finger and said that they were very small enemies who would not be able to withstand even a blow of half their strength. At this time, the boys felt a sincere and deep fear that emanated from the bodies of the enemies. Melia tried to understand what kind of murderous aura was emanating from these terrifying monsters. The girl turned very pale, fully understanding the fact that they could actually kill them. Suddenly, Zeon firmly told Melia that she should move a little further away from them. The guy coldly said that these two losers were extremely close in strength to the Demon King. Hearing Zeon's words about the Demon Kings, Melia froze for a moment, then asked if the guy was really calling them losers. Tsukubachi sighed, then said with some joy that it seemed like at least someone in this place had a normal head since they were able to understand this. With a pitiful grin, she said that, unfortunately, there were far from two of them. Looking at him, she said that there were four of them. At this time, there was some silence in the state neighboring Bruneleg. Alba, Mr. and Ruby were facing a fairly strong enemy. Alba screamed loudly and asked what was in front of them. The demon took a deep breath while Mr. looked at his enemies rather tensely. He said that the little animal seemed to be special. The Demon Queen of the Void, the Ice Empress, Hisetsuka, raised her hand and said that these were just trifles and they should destroy them as soon as possible. At this time, the Demon Dragon King, the Dragon Treasure, Ryogudrasil, stood by her. She said that after this battle was over, they should go to the next world and quickly. The demon only said that no one except the true Demon Lord deserved their attention. At this time, Nagaraja laughed slyly and said that it was time for them to finish their walk through this world. He took a few steps forward and told Tsukubachi that he was leaving them to her, and he was going to take that guy over there. He pointed at Zeon. With all his cruelty, the demon told the man that he would be a good target for his long bored swords. Right after that, he pulled out all four of his swords and said that he really hoped that this man could quench his thirst, at least a little. Zeon became a little tense as he watched this monster. Tsukubachi sighed somewhat offendedly and said that she agreed, since he himself asked about it. The girl said that this was the reason why she did not want to work with him at all. Immediately after that, she spread her hands and created a deep, dark flash. She waved her hands using her skill Dark Inferno. After this attack, Sister Noel and Pero Darkness rushed into battle, wanting to stop this girl from destroying the city. Sister concentrated her powers into her fist, and then sternly told Tsukubachi that they were going to destroy her. She used her killer move, a strike to the solar plexus. Immediately after this attack, Tsukubachi flew back, not responding to this attack. Zeon, noticing this, shouted at them that they should stop, because these demons simply could not be defeated so easily. As he was saying this, Melia suddenly raised her hands and kissed the boy on the cheek. Zeon was surprised. The girl said that she completely understood the fact that Zeon was very worried about them, but he should not forget that they were heroes. Zeon was a little confused as he looked at Melia. At that very moment, Tsukubachi grabbed Sister Noel's hand and said in a sickly voice how sorry she was. Noel was horrified to see that her attack had not produced any reaction. She looked at the demon in shock, who was still in perfect condition. Tsukubachi pulled Sister Noel into the air and looked at her with a smirk, then said that she could not be defeated with either magic or simple physical attacks to the front. Suddenly, the Demon King's attention fell to the side. She saw Melia, who with her fury held a flaming sword in her hands. The girl thought that she needed to at least take this demon away from Zeon a little. She quickly launched an attack, using a strike that pierced matter itself. This was Melia's special super move. The girl continued to strike one blow after another, thinking that she should not give Tsukubachi a chance to rest under any circumstances. She continued to push her aside, thinking that this was all for Zeon's sake, and there was no way she could lose this battle. She launched one attack after another, already thinking that even if she simply died, she would at least be able to buy some time for Zeon to destroy the monster that was targeting him. Zeon called Melia by name in a panic, not wanting her to die. But the demon he was fighting interrupted him and said that this girl trusted the guy very much. Nagaraja looked at Melia and said that she was just a pathetic girl. He asked if she really thought that Zeon could defeat him on his own. He looked at the boy and said that everything was exactly as he thought, and the local people were too self-confident. Not wanting to listen to this any longer, Zeon told Nagaraja to keep quiet for a little while. Zeon couldn't understand what was happening to him, because in his past he only dreamed of meeting guys who would be like Nagaraja or Tsukubachi. The guy was thinking about Melia when he said that he didn't understand at all where they came from now and what feelings it evoked in him. But there was simply no time to think about it now. He looked at Nagaraja and told him as an unknown demon king to attack him already. Zeon clenched his hands into fists and said with fury in his eyes that he was in a rather nervous state right now. Zeon began to wrap his body in energy with a serious expression. At this time, Nagaraja said that it was wonderful. The Demon King asked Zeon if he would really go that far. Nagaraja's eyes turned bloodshot and he shouted loudly that this had become very interesting. The demon looked at the guy in front of him and said that this alone was worth traveling through the worlds. Nagaraja said that he was always happy to fight a strong opponent. He spoke enthusiastically about how he thought the man was like that. He wanted the boy to quench his thirst for a fight. Zeon smiled slightly and sighed. Nagaraja pointed his sword at the boy and asked what was wrong with him. The Demon King hoped that the boy was not going to say that he gave up. Zeon clenched his fists and smiled, saying he wasn't planning anything like that. He said he just remembered someone. The boy looked at Nagaraja and said that he understood the Demon King. Zeon began to walk towards Nagaraja. He repeated over and over again the words about how boring it was. He confidently walked straight towards the demon, saying that this was a bore. Zeon asked Nagaraja if he wanted to fight someone at full strength. Zeon stopped right in front of the Demon King and seriously said that just because of this, it is impossible to destroy the whole world. The next moment, Nagaraja cried out in shock and his eyes widened greatly. Zeon delivered a powerful blow which he called the Demon King's punch, straight at Nagaraja. The Demon King was shocked and could not understand what it was. Zeon looked at Nagaraja and said seriously that he understood that he was the king. The boy said that for him, one blow was nothing, swinging his fist. Zeon said that for this reason, he would serve him first class. The guy dealt a series of blows to the Demon King. The Demon King's body quickly disintegrated into small pieces. He was in shock. The guy said that since the demon wanted to fight to the point of exhaustion, he should be happy. He swung for another blow. Zeon looked straight at Nagaraja and said words about how he wasn't holding back. One day, The village of Melia was attacked by members of a magical family. Then horror and shrill screams were heard all around. The girl and her mother could die at any moment, and then she appeared, the heroine in a fluttering cloak, hurrying towards them with all her might. Melia was lying on the ground, badly wounded and breathing heavily. Sukubachi walked towards the girl, saying that for a second she was even surprised. A female after all. Sukubachi smiled and said that the girl had been struggling and struggling, but to no avail. She said that Melia had tried hard. The demoness looked at Sister Noel and Darkness and said that she had barely touched them, but they could no longer move. She said that in this world, even humans are too powerless. Sukubachi gave Melia a powerful kick, sending her flying to the side, and said that she would smash the girl against the wall. The demoness said that it would be more interesting for her. Suddenly, Melia interrupted her, saying that she had just thought that she was not such a weak hero. She directed her power into her wound and said that she was still one of the strongest 100. Melia recalled how she almost immediately overtook the one she admired so much back then. The girl's wound began to heal, and she said that this was not really the case. Melia rose to her feet and said that it did not matter at all. Sukubachi was surprised to think that the girl had been burned by the flames. She asked what the girl was talking about. Melia looked at the demoness with a determined look, saying that she was a hero. She pointed her finger at her opponent and said that she would lose to her now. That was what the heroine was talking about. Sukubachi opened her mouth in surprise and then began to laugh loudly. She told the girl not to make her laugh. She looked at Melia, who stood unwaveringly in front of her, and asked if the girl was serious. The demon queen waved her hand and furiously shouted words for the girl to lie, but not to overdo it, while calling her a human female. Sukubachi angrily asked Melia who she thought the demoness was. Suddenly she saw flames. Melia used the fire dragon summoning sword, causing a huge flame to appear. The demoness, with a confused expression on her face, thought that the girl had become stronger than she had been before. She licked her lips and said that she was sorry. A mark appeared on the demon queen's body. Sukubachi used the magic temple's obscene breathing technique. The demon queen Sukubachi smiled and opened her arms and shouted the words that by absorbing all magical and physical damage, she would make the enemy's power her own. She said, smiling broadly, that the girl was human. The demoness was saying that the girl would never defeat her, the demon queen. Melia was about to attack Sukubachi at that moment. Melia told her that she had a loved one. These words greatly surprised the demoness. Melia confidently rushed towards Sukubachi and said that she still wanted to talk to him about a lot of things. She looked down and said words about how she could have a future like her dream. Melia, with a desperate expression on her face, shouted loudly that she didn't need it. The girl used Melia Vermilion's divine flame technique to attack the demoness Sukubachi. The demon queen couldn't believe that the girl was using a fire attack again. She thought that the girl was stupid because if she continued like this, she would burn her body and collapse. Melia screamed madly that she was the one he praised. The girl dreamed about it and saw it in her dreams. The girl closed her eyes and screamed words about how this world belonged not only to her, but to all people. She said that she would protect him. Sukubachi tried to stop the girl in panic. Her eyes widened because she couldn't believe what was happening. Melia used the technique of the blinding radiance of the divine fire spheres. Sukubachi thought that it was the sun. Melia screamed loudly, and the demoness gritted her teeth. The demon queen furiously exclaimed, asking if the girl was laughing at her. Sukubachi spread her arms out, screaming that some human female was doing this. Melia was very shocked by what she saw. She couldn't believe that the demoness's body was being consumed by flames. The demon queen tensed up as the fiery flames entered her body. She screamed. Sukubachi turned to Melia and asked her if the girl really had the power to hurt the demon queen. She said that the last time she was so exhausted was when her opponent was a demon lord. Both girls were very weak and could barely stand on their feet. The demoness continued to say that she would still win. She said the words that her body was already falling apart. She looked at Melia, saying that she would now return all her magical power to her. Melia breathed heavily and thought that that reception had cost her dearly. The demoness laughed, assuming that the girl herself understood this. Sukubachi pointed her finger at the heroine and said with a smile that in the end she was just a helpless human female. Melia could barely stand and listen as the Demon Queen said that the girl would not be able to win against her. Suddenly, someone said that the girl was not alone. The next moment, Trishman attacked the demoness using the technique of the 7 stars of divine light. The demoness was taken by surprise. She turned to the boy in shock. Melia called out to the head of the knights, Trishman, in surprise, who replied with a smile on his face that he was not the only one. At this moment, the Demon Queen was pierced by the magic bullet technique, the Demon Slayer. Tsukubachi began to look around to see where she was being attacked from. Daimade was sitting on the tree behind the girl with a wide smile. Yusha Trishman shouted words about how she wouldn't have time to absorb the power or recover, so this was their only chance. The guy thought about putting all of himself into this blow. He once again used the 7 stars divine light technique, piercing the Demon Queen. Tsukubachi asked if they were making fun of her. She, greatly weakened, screamed at the people. The demoness rushed towards the knight, shouting that they were useless and that they would never defeat her. Yusha Trishman was taken by surprise. The guy raised his sword, but at that moment someone attacked the demoness from the side, which also made her confused. She turned around in irritation to see Darkness Feather and Sister Noel attacking her. Tsukubachi began to scold them loudly. Melia said that the demoness was strong because she was a demon queen and then added something else. Melia stood there with a sword in her hands and talked about how they were heroes. She said that the world relied on them and all that. And to protect it, they sacrificed themselves to surpass her. The heroine, with a determined look, began to swing her sword, shouting that she would never lose to the demon. Tsukubachi tried to object to the humans but could only swear. At that moment, Melia rushed towards her with an attack. The girl quickly and confidently delivered a precise blow. She was able to deal critical damage to the demoness, who fell to her knees. Melia wondered if the past herself was looking at herself. The girl thought with confidence that she had become a hero who was capable of saving someone. Meanwhile, the Demon King Nagaraja and Zeon were actively fighting, not giving in to each other. Zeon dealt a powerful blow to the demon. Nagaraja swung back to strike back, but the boy was able to easily block it with his hand. Zeon's hand and the demon's weapon crossed with each other. The Demon King spoke words about the hero being an amazing guy. He looked at Zeon and said that with a normal human body, he could only last so long in a fight with him. The Demon King looked at Zeon carefully and said that he had never met such an opponent almost equal in strength in any world. Zeon and the demon quickly jumped away from each other. The guy frowned slightly and, while recovering his hand, thought that it seemed like the demon was not fighting at full strength. Zeon apologized to the Demon King, saying that he was only enjoying their battle, which slightly surprised the Demon King Nagaraja. The boy stood before the demon and said that he did not want to put up with his addictions. Nagaraja laughed and told the boy not to talk like that. The demon asked the guy about how he also felt his emotions. Zeon looked at him attentively. Nagaraja looked at Zeon intently and said that he saw what was inside the boy. He saw a character that was begging to be broken. The demon looked at the boy and said that he saw too much power for a human. He said that the boy represented violence. Zeon stood in front of him, clenching his fists. The boy tensed up a little and Nagaraja laughingly asked if he had really hit a sore spot. The Demon King said that it was so important, especially for ordinary strongmen. Nagaraja spoke seriously and said that there was nothing wrong with trying one's best to defeat the demon. Zeon looked closely at the demon in front of him and asked what he was trying to say. Nagaraja shouted back at the boy what he was trying to say to make the boy try harder. At that moment, the ground beneath his feet began to crumble. Zeon was taken by surprise by this attack. He was very surprised and began to fall. The guy was buried under debris. While he was trying to get out, the demon was talking about something he couldn't understand. He said that since Zeon was such a strong man, why wasn't he giving it his all? The Demon King grabbed his weapon and shouted that neither man nor demon would want to keep all the power within themselves. He was saying that there was no opponent against whom he could give it his all. He asked the guy if he was right. The Demon King's hands swung out and he shouted words for Zeon to rejoice because he would release all the power inside him. Zeon, with a calm face, prepared to defend himself. The boy was attacked by a technique of the heavenly sword that cuts through divine truth. Zeon was able to defend himself from the blow with his hands. He was slightly tense as the demon's sword pressed through him. Nagaraja asked the guy in surprise if he could block this too. The Demon King swung again, shouting that he wasn't done yet. Zeon quickly turned his gaze to the attack. Zeon turned around and used his fist to block the attack from the demonic sword king-cutting technique. At that moment, on the other side, another holy sword attack passed through the guy, decapitating everyone. Zeon was very surprised because he received a sword blow from the side. Nagaraja exclaimed that this would be the last blow. The Demon King aimed the sword of the gods at the boy, finishing off the series of blows. Zeon was shocked by this attack. The boy was lying on the ground and not moving. Nagaraja stood in front of him and said that it was not in vain that he got the swords from their temple in the multi-layered world. He looked at the boy and said that was it. The Demon King asked if his strength was not greater than the other 4 Demon Kings. Nagaraja turned away from the boy on the ground, saying that it had been a good fight. He added that the boy could no longer even hear him, when he suddenly turned around in surprise. Zeon stood in front of him, breathing heavily. He asked the demon about what seemed to be his surprise. Nagaraja said that this simply could not be. He said that only a demon lord could have withstood the last 4 blows. Zeon was barely able to stand while Nagaraja looked at him in surprise. The Demon King asked why the boy was still standing. He couldn't understand why the boy could still move. He asked the confused Zeon if he was really human. The guy stood there, hunched over, silently looking at the ground. He looked lost, and in his head was the thought that this was a disaster. Zeon thought with a lost expression that the demon hardly thought that this was all his power. The guy looked at the demon seriously and thought that in this life he had never fought at full strength. Nagaraja asked the boy with displeasure if he was not serious about their fight. He looked at him seriously and said that he had decided. The Demon King waved his hand, saying that since that was the case, he would change his plan a little. Zeon rushed forward towards Nagaraja in a panic, asking the demon what he was even planning to do. At that moment, Nagaraja struck with his hand, causing part of the city to be destroyed along that trajectory. The boy looked around worriedly, and the Demon King told him not to worry. Nagaraja looked at the boy carefully and said that the people from these houses had already fled. He pointed the second sword at Zeon and added words about how they wouldn't be able to escape the next one. The Demon King Nagaraja swung again, causing a shockwave to be created, and Zeon was knocked off his feet. The guy was very unhappy because he realized that the demon was not aiming at him, but at the city. Nagaraja stood there and said that although he didn't usually do this, there was nothing he wouldn't do to see the guy fight at full strength. The demon waved his hand, preparing to attack. He destroyed part of the city with his blow again. He assumed that the people were very important to the hero and pointed to the side. Zeon looked where the demon pointed. A small boy and girl were sitting among the debris, very frightened by what was happening. Nagaraja quickly rushed towards them, saying that he would unleash his fury on these children. He asked the boy madly that he could make him become serious. Nagaraja appeared before the frightened children, brandishing his weapon. At that moment, Zeon appeared before him, taking the blow himself. The Demon King was greatly surprised by such an act and was shocked by the stupidity of the boy. He asked the wounded boy why he had exposed himself to the attack while Zeon breathed heavily and looked at him. The boy turned to the children behind him and asked if they were okay. The boy, with tears in his eyes, called out Zeon's name. The boy began to apologize, saying that it was their fault. Zeon looked at them softly and told them not to worry about it. The demon looked down on the boy and said that it was just a mortal wound. Nagaraja took his sword out of the boy's body, saying that it was not interesting. This confused the boy. The Demon King looked at the boy carefully and said that he was apparently unable to establish rules of combat with such a fool. Nagaraja asked the wounded boy in front of him what he had achieved by saving these children. The Demon King said that if the boy died, then after the children, the world would perish. Nagaraja looked at the boy closely, asking if he really wanted to see the destruction of the world. Zeon looked at the demon confidently and answered him with words that maybe everything was so. The guy looked at his bloody hand and said that people are creatures that are very difficult to understand. He recalled his acquaintances and said that they think rationally, but are also true to their passions. He also added that they are also faulty fools. Zeon clenched his fist and said that humans were far from ideal. He raised his head and said with a slight smile that this is what they are. The Demon King looked at the boy skeptically because he couldn't understand it. He asked if it wasn't easier to abandon them or leave them to die. Zeon closed his eyes and with a smile on his face replied with words that he could not do that. He confidently walked towards the demon, saying that he was a hero. The little boy and girl looked at the guy with tears in their eyes. They called out loudly to him and asked him to win. Zeon walked closer to the Demon King. They stood opposite each other and looked. Zeon said with a smile that since the demon was asking why the guy saved them, he would show him now. He clenched his fist and prepared to attack. The next moment, Zeon delivered a very powerful blow straight at Nagaraja, who was sent flying backwards. He opened his eyes in shock and looked ahead questioningly. Nagaraja, badly wounded, chuckled, saying that it was frightening. He was glad to know what the boy was like when he was serious. Zeon stood next to him, breathing heavily. The demon continued to say that he acknowledged that, although there were many people in this world, but the guy was still chosen as a strong man. He shouted with fury that he actually felt sorry for Zeon. He said that Zeon's strength was not human, but closer to theirs, the Demon King's. Nagaraja rose to his feet and pointed his sword at the boy. He said words about how sad he was that Zeon was just a fragile human. He looked at the boy in front of him, saying that the wound he had inflicted was fatal. The Demon King told the boy that he should always try to protect himself. He said that the boy was only human and his wounds would not heal right away. Nagaraja spoke with madness in his eyes, saying that this difference could never be overcome. He was talking about the difference between him and the boy. The demon prepared to attack again, saying that despite this, as a sign of respect for his strength, he would now show Zeon what he was like when he was serious. The demon spread his arms out to the sides, and energy began to emanate from his body. The Demon King prepared himself using the Nagaraja technique, the real liberation. He looked at the boy carefully, calling him a weak man. He said that he would show him the limits of his body. Zeon laughed slightly and asked in response that the demon was really saying that humans were weak. The boy clenched his fist tightly and said that he finally seemed to understand something. Nagaraja asked the boy in bewilderment what he was even saying now. Zeon replied that he had always wondered why such frail people would stand up to demon kings like them. He wondered why he felt that there was something dazzling about them even though they were so weak. Zeon looked at the demon with a smile on his face and said that he now had something, albeit in very small quantities. The Demon King Nagaraja asked the boy to wait in great confusion. He opened his eyes in shock and asked who the boy was. The hero clenched his fist tightly and answered him with a confident look that he was Zeon Ishtar, who was a human. Nagaraja was very shocked by what was happening. He could not believe that he was overwhelmed by the power of Zeon. He thought that this simply could not be. Nagaraja braced himself and exclaimed words that this was very good. He said that he had seen such warlike fervor for the first time in several hundred years. However, Zeon was still a man. The Demon King rushed to attack Zeon, shouting that victory would be his. Nagaraja thought that the Demon King was a perfect being. He had no enemies, so there was no one to help the boy. He attacked Zeon. The boy stood there, clenching his fists, and talked about how tiring it was. Nagaraja thought that a person alone in such a situation would not be able to survive. Zeon thought about Melia. He thought that humans were tiny and weak, but because she existed, he thought that a human could be strong. The boy opened his hand, gathering strength. He clenched his fist again and spoke words about how everything was exactly like that. He swung for a powerful attack. Zeon shouted the words that the most dazzling thing is now in this hand. He held himself with a confident look. The Demon King Nagaraja was very surprised by the boy's abilities. He was very curious. The demon, with full immersion, shouted words for the boy to show him this. The Demon King used his Nagaraja-style technique, the final secret of the mastery. At this moment, Zeon used the sacred sword of the four elements. It was the creation of the world, the hero, the fist attack. The demon and the human clashed in battle with each other. Nagaraja's armor began to crack apart. Zeon spoke words that, as a former Demon King with many years of experience, he, as a human, would surpass his former self. He dealt a critical blow to the Demon King Nagaraja. The Demon King Nagaraja was astonished. His body began to be covered with many cracks. The demon began to laugh slightly because he thought it was unbelievable. His body continued to crumble. Nagaraja fell to the ground in defeat, saying that they had been defeated, while the boy turned around and walked away. At that moment, Zeon heard someone loudly call his name, which attracted the attention of the young man. He turned around and saw the heroes approaching him. Melia asked the boy if he was okay. The girl, with a joyful expression on her face, raised her weapon and shouted the words that they had won. A large scar was visible from under her torn blouse, which attracted the guy's attention. Zeon, with great surprise, called the girl by name. At that moment, Zeon was thanked, calling him a man. Zeon looked at the Demon King Nagaraja, who was lying on the ground nearby. The demon said that it was an amazing battle. Nagaraja looked at the boy and with his last strength said that he could be proud because he had destroyed the Demon King. At that moment, the children, who were still crying loudly, rushed to the boys. They were very happy. The little children ran up to Zeon, who looked at them with a caring smile. The demon continued to talk about how they really were the true heroes. All the heroes gathered around Zeon. They looked at the shocked Demon King. Zeon responded with agreement, saying that he knew. After some time in the palace, Princess Beitor closed her eyes with a satisfied expression. She said that it was incredible. The girl was glad that the day had finally come when the rating would change. The princess stood in front of her throne, and next to her was her knight Yusha Trishman. The girl said that no one would complain if the guy became a master. After her words, Princess Betuar thought deeply. At that moment, Princess Betuar turned around with a big smile on her face and waved her hand. She called Zeon Ishtar by name. Her Highness joyfully announced that Zeon Ishtar was appointed as the master, #1 in the hero rankings. Suddenly, Princess Betuar froze in a stupor because she was very surprised. In front of her in the ceremonial hall, there was no guy. There was only the equally surprised Mr. Hofter. The girl indignantly asked the question of whether there really was no guy. Princess Betuar frowned and said in confusion that he was just here. She asked where the guy had disappeared to. Yusha Trishman, who was standing behind the girl, laughed awkwardly. Her Highness closed her eyes in displeasure and sighed deeply. She turned away, saying that she only thought that Zeon was starting to act a little more heroic. The knight scratched his face awkwardly and smiled. Yusha Trishman extended his hand to the princess with a smile, saying that it was not the first time Zeon had done this. Princess Betuar was slightly offended at this moment. Trishman, the #4 hero of the Holy Sword in the hero rankings, said that the guy was as ill-mannered as always. Her Highness Betuar looked at Mr. Hofter, who stood alone in front of her, and asked if someone had really appeared who could become better than a man. The hero was talking enthusiastically with the knights at that moment. Princess Betuar looked at the hero with a wide smile. She laughed and asked him what he would say about this. Mr. Hofter noticed the girl, so he looked at her. The #2 hero, Mr. Hofter, the strongest in the world, replied with a smile that it was natural. The hero recalled the past battle, telling how they ended in a draw, allowing the demons to escape. Mr. Hofter, surrounded by knights, spoke about how only one guy could defeat the Demon King. The hero spread his arms out to the sides and asked Princess Betuar, who was standing in front of him, if it didn't suit the guy. The princess nodded questioningly and asked Mr. Hofter to clarify his words. The man clenched his fist and agreed with a smile. He clarified that he meant the opportunity to be called the strongest. Mr. Hofter quickly approached Princess Betuar. He leaned toward the girl, who was looking at him with a sly expression, and asked if she would allow him to change his title. The princess replied with a smile that she would never allow it. Meanwhile, Zeon stood on the balcony, peacefully closing his eyes and smiling, thinking about something of his own. Suddenly, a girl approached and saw the guy. She joyfully exclaimed that she had finally found him. This attracted Zeon's attention. The girl called out to Zeon and said that they needed to talk. The guy turned in her direction with a questioning look because of this. The #3 hero, Melia Vermilion, the hero of the Blazing Flames, asked the boy with concern as to why he had run away from the ceremony. Zeon waved his hand with a smile on his face, saying that the weather was fine today. He said that he couldn't help himself. The girl was very surprised by his frivolity. She approached Zeon and slapped him on the back with her hand. He exclaimed words about the guy being at least a little more responsible. Melia looked at the boy with an inspired expression, raising her finger. She said that Zeon was the first. It was she who exclaimed the words that this was the pinnacle of the hero's path. Zeon scratched the back of his head and replied that it seemed like reality. Zeon smiled and pointed his finger at the girl, saying that she herself had made great progress in the rankings. The girl had risen from 7th place to 3rd. Melia put her head in her hands in embarrassment and looking at the guy next to her, replied with words that you can't argue with that. The girl awkwardly scratched her cheek and closed her eyes, saying that even though she was in third place, she still couldn't comprehend it. The guy asked with surprise that wasn't it always like that. He said that it was unusual for him too, considering that she had advanced so quickly. Zeon looked closely at the girl and said that sooner or later she would most likely be the first. Melia looked at Zeon in surprise and asked him what he meant by that. The guy shifted from one foot to the other out of awkwardness. He told her that his father had always been under his mother's thumb. She added that there was a high probability that he would end up in the same position. The guy's words left Melia perplexed. Zeon sheepishly placed his hand on his neck, telling him that he felt something before the battle. At that moment, he looked at Melia, who was calming the crying children. At that time, he didn't really understand anything. But now it dawned on him. The girl leaned over and looked into the guy's face, asking what he was trying to tell her. Zeon smiled and said that everything was very simple. Zeon looked at Melia in front of him and said warmly that he liked the girl. He proposed to her. The girl looked at the guy, enchanted. A moment later, Melia began to blush. She looked questioningly at the guy who had just confessed. The realization of what had happened suddenly dawned on her. Her face became even redder. She trembled slightly and asked Zeon to repeat his words. The guy stood in front of Melia and said that he liked her. He proposed to her again. The girl, confused, began to ask who was going to marry who. Zeon looked at the girl with a smile and replied that she was marrying him. He smiled even wider, saying that it was because he loved her. Melia looked at Zeon with happy eyes. She folded her hands and hesitated a little, but answered with consent. Zeon turned away from the girl with pride, saying that it was great. His face was glowing with happiness. He said that since they had decided everything, he needed to tell his parents. Melia stood behind him with a red face and was shaking slightly. She suddenly apologized to Zeon. Melia closed her eyes, from which tears were flowing profusely, and extended her hand towards the guy. She said that it was impossible for now. After these words, the girl's nose started bleeding and she began to fall. Zeon looked at the girl in surprise. Princess Betiur screamed loudly. She was shocked by the river of blood pouring from the balcony. She could not understand what was happening. That day, the entire castle was flooded with a sea of blood from the nose. A few days later, the sun was shining brightly in the village of Nanana, when suddenly a loud cry was heard. Mother Fiona ran breathlessly to her dear husband Hans. Father Zeon looked up from his gardening work. He asked his wife what could have happened and where she was rushing to in such a hurry. Fiona, with a joyful expression on her face, approached her sweaty husband and called out to him. She excitedly told him that she had just received a letter from Zeon. The man looked at the papers in his wife's hands with interest. The couple read the letter and stood frozen in shock. Hans suddenly exclaimed in shock, cursing at what he saw. The woman also looked at the letter in her hands in shock. Zeon's parents quickly began to fuss, saying that they had to prepare for the holiday, and they also needed to prepare themselves mentally. Fiona turned to her panicking husband with a smile and said that it wouldn't hurt for him to calm down first. Melia's dressed in a neat wedding dress and her hair was decorated with fresh flowers. She looked at the guy with an embarrassed smile and asked if he liked her look. Zeon was also dressed in a wedding suit. He looked at his bride and replied with a smile that the dress suited her very well. The guy waved his hand with a wide smile and said the words that it was true what they say about clothes making a man. Melia clenched her fist and asked irritably if the guy even understood what he had just said. Zeon raised his clear gaze to the girl and responded with words about how she was the most beautiful in the whole world. While the guy was saying these words, everything around him seemed to shine. The girl was very shocked by such a statement. She covered her reddened face with her hand and stretched the other one out in front of Zeon. Her whole body began to tremble. Melia told the guy that she was glad. However, she asked him to stop it. The bride covered her nose with her hand, telling the guy to do without his jokes today. She said that her nose almost bled. Zeon suddenly realized what had happened, so he bewilderedly asked the girl for forgiveness. The girl suddenly started talking about how, although she was happy, all this was so unexpected for her. Zeon took this statement from his bride with a little surprise. He looked at the girl carefully. Melia smiled awkwardly and scratched her reddened cheek with her finger. She closed her eyes, saying that the guy had proposed to her. Zeon laughed with the same awkwardness, adjusting his hair. He supposed that he too had apparently become more human-like. Melia, confused by this, answered negatively. She said that this was not an indicator at all. The groom awkwardly turned his head the other way and heard a negative answer. He thought for a moment and then replied that he understood everything. The girl looked at the guy with bewilderment. Zeon looked at the girl again, nodding his head slightly. He suddenly added words about how he wanted to tell the girl something. Melia looked at Zeon questioningly because of these words. The boy suddenly became more serious. He addressed the girl by name. Zeon confidently said the words about being reincarnated as a human. He told her about his past as a demon lord. He smiled and asked what the girl would do if that were the case. The girl froze in a stupor. She silently looked at the guy with a slight bewilderment on her face. She suddenly frowned slightly, putting her hand to her head. She said words about how everything was clear to her now. Melia was saying that many things now made sense to her. Zeon scratched his head awkwardly at the girl's answer and smiled, closing his eyes. The girl tilted her head to the side and asked with an expression of extreme displeasure if the guy was serious. Melia, with an angry expression on her face, poked her finger at the guy's forehead, who was slightly taken aback by such a reaction. The bride shouted words about not talking about such important things on the wedding day. Zeon apologized to the girl in a panic. Melia suddenly said that she would not do anything. This statement caught Zeon off guard. He looked at the girl in front of him in confusion. The girl looked at her fiancé with a supportive smile and said whether he was the ruler or someone else, it didn't matter to her. After all, he was still him. Melia held her hands out in front of her, wrapping her hand around her fist. She told Zeon that if he decided to become a lord again, then she would be there to beat all the bad intentions out of the boy. She held out her fist to him, telling Zeon not to worry. At that moment, Zeon looked at the girl with warmth in his eyes, agreeing with her. He said with a smile that he could always rely on her. Once upon a time, there lived a strongest demon lord. For a long time, the lonely demon lord wanted to remain the strongest. Melia Vermilion looked at the boy carefully and asked him to listen to what she had to say. Zeon heard his fiancée, so he turned his gaze to her with a smile and nodded. The girl said that she was interested in learning something from the former demon lord. Melia Vermilion and Zeon Ishtar stood in front of the large door in their wedding suits, looking at each other. The bride asked her groom what he thought of humans. The girl held Zeon's arm and looked at him attentively. The guy looked forward, telling the girl to give him time to think. The guy closed his eyes and with warmth on his face began to answer his bride's question. He began his story about people. Zeon thought about all the people he knew. He thought about Anon, who had received many awards, about the guys from the guild who were reading the news in the newspaper with great surprise. He also thought about the heroes and demons he met in the new place. The guy did not forget about his parents, who cried at his wedding. And so, the former demon lord was reborn as a human, and the story of how he gained power, connections, and a handful of light began. At the wedding, the couple looked at each other with warmth and care. After some time, thunder rumbled in the inner chambers of the demon castle. Someone was summing up the conversation. Zeon walked down the hallway and said in surprise that he hadn't even expected that their kiss at the wedding would cause a river of blood to flow from the girl. Melia shyly nudged the guy with her elbow and shouted words for him to stop talking about it already. The girl looked at the guy with bewilderment, asking him where they were. She asked the smiling Zeon what he was going to do. The guy reached out his hand to the door in front of him and pressed it lightly. He asked the girl what she meant. At that moment, the door opened slightly and the guy with a smile on his face replied that Melia would understand when she saw it. In front of the couple, on the throne, sat a demon who looked exactly like Zeon. Melia looked at the demon with a shocked expression. Zeon looked closer and asked with a smile about the fact that in front of them, there were only familiar faces. Melia grabbed the guy's hand in a panic and asked him to wait. She said something about how they were like demons. The guy looked at him and said yes. The demon on the throne silently looked at the people in front of him. Zeon said that this was another version of the world. The guy said that it was even unexpected because the demon began to scour other worlds to find someone to play with. Zeon looked at the demon in front of him with a smile, saying that he personally preferred death. He added that he had to admit that he was a bit obsessed with a desire to alleviate boredom. The demon looked at the boy and asked who he was. Zeon closed his eyes, answering with words that it seemed the demon did not know his name yet. The boy headed towards the demon, saying that his name was Zeon Ishtar. The guy clenched his fist as he talked about being a former demon lord. He said it sounded a little silly, but he was the strongest. Zeon Ishtar looked straight at the demon in front of him and confidently said the words that he could simply be called a hero.